Hello, Sonia, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great.
I think that everybody is here. Lucy mentioned that Veronica was absent from today's meeting, so I think everybody else is signed on and we're ready to go when you are, Mike.
Okay, all right. Let me this over here. All right. Move this over.
Mayor Villalta, I believe Chief Breezy's on the line to do the pledge. I think he called in.
Fantastic. Okay. So, is it okay if I start?
Yes.
All right. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the City Council meeting of September 16th, 2020 at 4 p.m. The city has established a temporary email address that citizens can use to email the public comments on any agenda item. It is limited to 250 words or less. Any public comments received by September 16, 2020 prior to 4 p.m. will be read aloud during the appropriate time and agenda item. The email address is cityclerk@losbanos.org. Public comment during the public hearings will be taken in real time via email. Once the public hearing is open, the City Council will pause the meeting in order to receive emails directed at the public hearing, up to 250 words, and will be read the comments into the record after resuming the meeting. As time permits, people indicate that comments are for the particular public hearing by putting public hearing in the subject line of the email and the title of the public hearing. The council chambers are closed to the public. Those interested in viewing the city council meeting can do so on the City of Los Banos website at www.youtube.com/watch?Y=SC3NQ8A8IUE and feature equals UTU.be. I know that's a long email address, but you can go to the city website and it will be there. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of September 16th, 2020. And Chief Breezy, if you're on the line, would you lead us in the flag salute?
I would, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. Let's go on to roll call. Director Maloney?
Faria?
Here.
Johnson Santos? Jones?
Here.
Lewis?
Here.
Villalta?
Here. We do have a quorum. Consideration of approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion by Faria, second by Lewis to approve the agenda. All in favor? Roll call. Director Faria,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Galalta, yes. Public forum. Members of the public may address the city council members on any item of interest that is within the jurisdiction of the city council, which includes agenda and non-agenda items. No action will be taken on non-agenda items, and speakers may submit their comments by submitting a written statement limited to 250 words or less, or by dropping it off the utility box at City Hall at 520 J Street by mail, or emailing city clerk at losbanos.org. Comments received will be read into the record during the city council meeting. Director Maloney, do we have any comments?
I have received 0 comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone online who would like to comment on anything? Not receiving any email comments and not hearing anyone online, I will now close the public forum and go on to item 6, consideration and approval of consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and be voted on in one motion unless removed from the consent agenda by a city council member. And Director Maloney, tonight we have?
Items on the consent agenda are as follows. Warrant numbers 223418 through 223800 in the amount of $1,707,361.65. Minutes for the August 19th, 2020 City Council meeting. Minutes for the September 1st, 2020 Special City Council meeting. Approval of response letters from the Los Banos City Manager and the Los Banos Public Works Director, City Engineer, regarding Merced County Civil Grand Jury Final Report 2019-2020 relating to the City of Los Banos roads maintenance. City Council Resolution number 6262, authorizing that the City Manager execute the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Assurance of Timely Project Delivery form for the City of Los Banos State Route 152 Signal Synchronization Project and adopt a revised budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021 as it pertains to the CMAQ fund account. And the items are to be approved as submitted.
Okay, is there any city council member who would like to remove item A through E for discussion?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, I'd like to remove item D for discussion.
Item, say again, please.
Item D as in Deborah.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to remove an item for discussion? All right, Mrs. Lewis, would you go ahead and make the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted minus item D as in David.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, Mr. Jones, go ahead. You second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Okay, so I have a motion by Lewis, a second by Jones to approve the consent agenda A, B, C, and E, minus item D. All in favor? Mr. Faria?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
And Villalta, yes. Okay, Mrs. Lewis, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I guess I would just like a little bit of further explanation from our Public Works Department as to the complaint regarding our fog sealing of the streets and what the plan is for mitigation.
Okay, thank you. The complaint actually isn't made public to us, and we don't know who complained. But mainly the Merced County Civil Grand Jury got a complaint, and it mainly had to do with our fog seal program and the ability to report street issues and what to do on that. It was mainly the finding that they had was that any street below a 64 or satisfactory level pavement management index doesn't receive with fog seal the kind of maintenance that is necessary. It's not a total waste, but it's not a 5-year at all. So it's interesting because this fiscal year we actually took the fog seal out totally of the program this year, because with our new crack sealing machine, we were, with weather permitting, we're on the schedule to crack seal 95 to 100% of our streets this year, and we did 4 overlays instead of fog seal at all. So we looked at this, and what we're going to do on this, I don't necessarily disagree with this, and we were looking at this before it came up. What we will be doing in 21-22 is we will look at streets, and if we continue the fog seal program, it'll be only on streets that are satisfactory rating or higher, and we'll use the remaining money in other ways, either overlay or Cape Seal or other ways we can do this. Now, every May we bring this forward to you, to the council for approval for SB1 funding, and we say what we're going in the streets, and a large percentage of that is fog seal. When we bring this forward in May, we'll have done some research, more research into that, and we'll see if we're just half a program of fog seal and then more overlays. We're doing overlays now. They're quite a bit more expensive, but they of course are a better solution. So we already had started addressing this, and when the grand jury met with us, we told them that. They understood that. They still had to make the recommendation, though. The other 3 items, the R2, R3, and R4, has to do with places where the citizens could contact the street division on for problems. We get 2 or 3 calls just into the main office, and another 2 or 3 calls into the F Street yard. So I think most people know how to reach us. But in order to do what they said before January 1st, 2021, we'll update the website, the city website, to have a street link separately. We'll also create a pamphlet that they've asked for by January 1st, 2021. And we'll create a centralized online system to report road problems by January 1st, 2021. But in the long range, at the end of this fiscal year, we're scheduled to have new software in here, and we'll have a whole more user-friendly way of doing this. But we had to do something before January 1st, 2021. So we will revise that so it's more user-friendly and available to people. But by the end of the year, we'll actually have the new software in place that will make it quite easy to have any issues with streets, sidewalks, and it actually goes into work orders. So that's kind of the crux of it. We've already budgeted this current year in taking this into account, and we were taking into account before. And they actually on R1 it recommended to do it in 21-22. So we're actually a year ahead of their recommendation. But that's the crux of what the grand jury response was when they investigated this.
Mrs. Lewis, any other comments?
Deborah is on mute.
I'm sorry, I forgot to turn my mic back on. Thank you for the explanation. I just wanted to have that out there for public hearing. Regardless, to me, it's of no concern who sent that in. I know that it's important to that person, but as a council member, it's important for me that our public understands what mitigations we're moving forward with to fix our street problem. Because I do know, as I've driven around in the district that I represent, there are some newer developed areas that, to me, it appears to be more than needing a fog seal. The crack seal machine that we purchased and possibly a new overlay would better serve taking care of that. And I'm glad to see that for these major problems that we're having here, that the fog seal is not going to be the level of treatment that we're going to be doing on our public streets. So thank you for the explanation, and that's all that I have, Mr. Mayor, on that.
Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Go ahead.
Mark, maybe for those that don't understand the terminology, just a very quick explanation of overlay, fog seal, and Cape seal. Do you mind?
Well,
Can you do
thank
it?
you. No, I can, yeah. Fog seal is basically an oil overlay that goes into the cracks and it makes the asphalt more flexible, and actually on good streets, it is the best cost-effective way of adding 7 years at each time you use it. It's very cost-effective. Cape Seal, you add in a structural element to it, a very thin structural asphalt element to it. So it's 3 times the cost, and it has to be done by a contractor. What you see lately on the streets that we're doing is, and this is our forces. Remember, we just got the new Cape machine. The crack fill machine, which is really efficient. And we also have our hot asphalt paver that actually the crews have come up to speed on, and you can see that in the 3 or 4 streets that they have paved out. It's really good. So that's actually going in there, grinding down about an inch, adding an inch to 2 inches of asphalt, and having a nice hard surface. The one thing to remember is the overlays eat money up 10 times as quick as any other way of doing it. So we definitely have, just on overlays alone, we probably have a good 25 years of overlays. So you won't see them. I mean, there'll be like 4 or 5 projects. Of the 4 projects we did this year, it's like $450,000 that we're spending. We don't have too much more than that every year. So you're only going to see 4 or 5, maybe 6 segments of streets that we're doing. And this is in addition to what we do every 2 years on the major streets with the regional funding. So Fog Seal probably will still be in the works for the streets in good repair. And we'll just do the others as we can based on their traffic index. And this is mainly local streets we're talking about now. The arterials and collectors will be handled through the every 2-year project. But I hope I gave you a little explanation of that, Alex.
Thank you, Mark.
Oh, no.
Okay, any other questions, Mrs. Lewis?
No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to make the motion? And Mr. Jones, would you please second that if you would?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve item D on the consent agenda as submitted.
Mr. Jones?
Mayor, I'll second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's been motioned by Lewis on the consent agenda to approve item D and second by Mr. Jones. All in favor? Mr. Faria?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Belalta, yes. Motion carries. Okay, that ends the consent agenda. Let's go on to public hearing. If you challenge a proposed action described herein in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described herein or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Public hearing. To receive a public comment and consideration of the final development plan 2020-01 for Mission Village South phases 5A and 5B for the project site located at East Mercy Springs Road, south of Mission Drive and north of Wilmot Avenue. More specifically identifies census parcel number 428-280-012. City Council Resolution number 6251, approving final development plan 2020-01 of Mission Village South Phase 5. And who are we going to first? Director Elms for a report, and then we'll do the public hearing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
So thank you to Mr. Mayor and the City Council. This item is being brought back to you. If we can go to the next slide. Just some background. Back in August, the City Council reviewed the final development plan for Mission Village South Phase 5, which is SCP number 2020-01. At that time, the City Council provided direction to the applicant to revise the final development plan to accommodate the conditions of approval requested by staff. The public hearing was continued to today's date, September 16, 2020, and the applicant has revised the vesting tentative tract map and final development plan. With those revisions, the item did have to go back to the Planning Commission, which it was presented to the Planning Commission on August 26th at a public hearing, where the Planning Commission approved revisions to the vesting tentative tract map and recommended approval of the revisions to the final development plan to the City Council. Next slide. Just as a part of background with the project, this is where the project is located. If you can hit next. It's bound by Mission Drive to the north, Wilmot to the south, Mercy Springs to the west, Place Road to the east, and New Grasslands Elementary. You can hit one more time. And Mission Village to the north. It is just west of Mission Village South, where D.R. Horton is completing that subdivision. And like I said, it is just west of the New Grasslands Elementary School. One more time. There you go. To the next slide, please. So I do want to highlight, and just in summary, the revisions that are provided within the final development plan. So the applicant is proposing to remove the gated community component, and they're proposing a public community. So it would be non-gated. These would be public streets, and they're proposing to have a publicly maintained community. They are also proposing to add sidewalks as was directed, and this would be throughout the development. The street section is proposed to be 42 feet wide from curb to curb. They're proposing to add open space within the multifamily lot. This was also direction provided by the City Council to accommodate a shade structure with picnic tables. And then the last item was the relocation of Lot A to the eastern corner of Street A, which is at the entrance of the subdivision and Wilmot Avenue, to accommodate a public park with a small play structure. And in the upcoming slides, I do highlight where that is located. Next slide. So this is the new lot layout. In summary, the real change to the vesting tentative tract map is the inclusion of sidewalks. So that's in kind of a shaded area along the lot lines, the frontage of those lot lines, the removal of the entry point gate, and the moving of Lot A. Next slide. This is the multifamily lot, and the big circle up on the right-hand side is the open space recreational area that's being proposed for the multifamily lot. It's proposed to have a shade structure with picnic tables and just a courtyard area for the multifamily component. And then in the oval on the bottom of the slide indicates the location of Lot A, which is the park area. It will consist of a small tot lot, so a small play area, and it does have fencing around it, and lots of landscaping. Next slide. Just a recap on the environmental assessment. The project was previously evaluated within the Mission Village and Mission Village Estate Mitigated Negative Declaration. There were no significant new information or changes in the environmental setting not previously identified or studied within the mitigated neg deck, and all potentially significant effects were analyzed adequately within that mitigated neg deck. So no additional review is necessary under C+. Next slide. So part of the final development plan analysis, the purpose of a plan development is to provide an integrated neighborhood development not possible under traditional lot-by-lot zoning. So it's to provide some flexibility from land use and design. It allows the opportunity to provide amenities and conveniences while maintaining a suitable neighborhood environment. And it's achieved by maximizing open space, preserving natural amenities, and creating additional amenities as approved by the City Council. Next slide.
Mr. Mayor, before we go forward, I'm hearing some feedback on my microphone, and I know there are several mics that are open that are not speaking. Could we ask those people to turn their mics off?
Yes, let's try that. Anyone else who has an open mic? I can shut mine off for a while, and then when Stacy's finished, then let's try that too, okay?
So as a part of the final development plan analysis, the final development plan is required for the total project or an approved phase of the project. So tonight, I've outlined this in a following slide. The council can approve the final development plan in phases. It does not have to approve the whole project. But each phase does need to be approved in order for development to occur in that section of the final development plan. The city council by resolution may do the following. They can grant approval of the final development plan subject to conditions of approval or may deny the request. And also the city council may impose conditions deemed necessary or desirable. Next slide. So project design, this is just a recap of what was explained back on August 5th, that this is a project that is designed in 2 phases. The first phase is 5A, which faces Mission Drive, and this consists of 10 detached single-family residential units. The second phase is 5B, and really the meat of what the discussion was back in August 5th and where the redesign needed to occur. It consists of 40 detached single-family residential units with 2 multifamily complexes. There are 2 8-unit buildings, which consist of 16 units for multifamily. The majority of the lots that are provided are between 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. There are a couple of 6,000 and 7,000 square foot lots in size. And the intent of the design as provided by the applicant was to provide a range of home choices from 7 different home models, and then also to integrate multifamily development in a single family residential neighborhood. Next slide. The land use here for this project, also as a recap, the general plan has it designated, as you can recall, as medium density residential. The zoning map has it designated as medium density zoning district, R2. And then this has a plan development overlay. And so the plan development overlay allows for that flexibility from zoning requirements, zoning standards such as setbacks, but it does not relieve the project from the density requirements that are set by the general plan. So the proposed density is 7.57 dwelling units per acre, and the minimum density for medium density is, in this particular zoning district, is 7. Next slide. So this slide just indicates the land use element and what the zoning is. This hand indicates R2, which is medium density. Next slide. The architecture, it does have 7 different architectural plans, which are within your packet of the final development plan. They consist of 1-story and 2-story models. And from the previous presentation, the architecture is not proposed to change. Next slide. Also, as a side note, as a part of the architecture, I did not include, as I did, I included back on the August 5th presentation, all of the architecture, but for simplicity and as we already went through that back on August 5th, I did not include that on the slides today, but if you need me to go back to architecture or have any questions, I would be happy to do that. Otherwise, we'll move on to open space and recreation. The applicant has proposed open space with a shade structure within the multifamily component. Next slide. And this is where that open space is located. So this is within the multifamily lot. And it is, if you can remember a couple slides before, it was highlighted in the big green circle. So it's up on the upper east side of the development of the multifamily lot. And so it does have a large shade structure. It has a lawn. It has a concrete patio area and sitting area with picnic tables. Next slide. And then this is the proposed open space within Lot A. And This would be a park area that consists of a small play structure, picnic park area, and concrete patio area as well. It will be at the corner of Wilmot and Street A, which is the entrance of this particular community, and will be fenced with a wrought iron fence as proposed. Next slide.
Mr. Mayor, before we go forward, Stacy, I'd like to go back 2 slides, please.
Okay.
Right there. That particular area there, when I look at the layout of the lots, it looks like I'm trying to figure out how this works because lots 1 through 9 kind of have a point at the top of the lot because you have a cul-de-sac on lots 7, 8, 9. So how does this north end of the property fit that? Is something being cut out?
We can actually, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, Sonia, go back a couple of slides to the layout. It's titled Mission Village South Phase 5B Lot Layout.
Okay.
So that's just,
Yeah, this right there, lots 7, 8, 9. How does this new proposal, is that being cut out or what's going on?
no. Did you see lot 14?
Yes.
And it's that area where the rectangle is, that's the open space area
Okay.
that we're zoomed in on right now, right next to the parking lot.
So the changes on the map that you showed us with the 2 green circles only include the lower half of lot A and the multi-family unit only going up to probably about lot 13 or 12, somewhere in there?
No, it does not affect those 2 lots. This is just that open space where Sonia has the cursor.
Okay, all right, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sonia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yep, and then lot 8. And then this is an alternative park location that is provided by the applicant. We received this last night as a possible alternative to the location of the park being at the entrance of the community development. Staff had some concern with Wilmot being a high traffic area, that a different alternative would be more preferable. At this location, staff does prefer this location. If the council should decide that a park is appropriate for this community. This particular location is off of the busy street, and it also creates more of a community park within this subdivision. I know that the applicant will probably go into their reasons of why the Lot A was located at the corner of Wilmot. It was also to provide that park space to make that open to the rest of Mission Village South and neighboring subdivisions. But staff does feel that this creates more of a sense of place and creates an environment for this particular subdivision as a sense of community. And in this particular alternative, I'm sorry, I didn't. So in this particular alternative, also, I do want to highlight that the shaded structure then is next to, it's up at the top, it's up above the 8-unit 2-story structure. That is where the new shaded, the outdoor open space for the multifamily component would be located. So that's not going with this alternative location. It would not be removed. It would just be relocated so that that structure could be shifted over to accommodate for the park. Okay, next slide. Within this slide, I wanted to highlight the location of existing parks. So within the red dot, that is Mission Village South Phase 5. That's general location of where the project is located. And the yellow circle to the south is Talbot Park, and the yellow circle to the east is the Verona Basin off of Palermo. Both of those parks are the most closest to the project site without having to cross the highway, Mercy Springs, Highway 165, and both of those parks are about 3/4 of a mile away. Okay, next slide. So the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on Phase 5A. That hearing was held on December 12th, and then again for 5B, they held that public hearing on July 8th, and then on August 26th. They approved approval of 5A and as well as 5B, the revised vesting tentative tract map 2020-02, which was on August 26th, and then recommended approval of the revisions of the proposed final development plan to the City Council subject to conditions of approval. Next slide. So public comment. Public hearing notice was published in the Los Banos Enterprise and mailed to the 300-foot radius. And this was on July 24th, 2020. And the public hearing was continued to today's date, September 16th, 2020. And as of today's date, no comments have been received. Next slide. So these are the options that are essentially presented to the City Council. There are 4 options that the City Council can take tonight in a recommendation or direction to move forward. The first would be to adopt resolution number 6251, which would approve the final development plan 2020-01 for Mission Village South Phase 5. Staff does prefer the alternative park locations. Staff would recommend that if the council should decide to move forward with staff's recommendation, that it would move forward with the alternative location. The second option for the council's consideration would be to approve the final development plan number 2020-01 for only Mission Village South 5A. And that would be in the case that the council decide that on 5B, they would like some redesign or redirection back to the applicant. But as 5A is 10 lots that face Mission Drive, and is essentially removed from really the discussion at hand. Should the council feel they do have an option to move forward with 5A, should they decide to do so. The next option, 3, would be to continue the public hearing and direct the applicant to redesign the project consistent with comments from the City Council. But just note that could require the project to go back to the Planning Commission for recommendation. It may also change the vesting tentative tract map. And then the last item, or the last option, would be denial of the final development plan, number 2020-01. In this scenario, staff would ask that the item get continued to the next City Council meeting so that staff could come back with final findings of denial for the project. So with that concludes my presentation. And the applicant or representative of Stonefield Homes, Tiffany Marshall, is on the line as well to answer any questions. Live right now. And I'm assuming Rick Mummer is as well.
Okay, council members.
He's here with me.
Okay. Council members, why don't we do this in phases? And let's see if Rick or Tiffany want to make any comments. And then we can either open a public hearing or you can question these two after they make their presentation. So let's have them speak first, and then we'll take step 2 either way. Go ahead, Rick or Tiffany.
Hi, good evening, Council. Thank you so much for hearing us again. I'd like to first thank Council for hearing us tonight, and also thank staff, especially Stacy. She did a phenomenal job working with us as we've come back to discuss and many of the details from the last Council of Conditions that we wanted to rework. So I wanted to make sure that we definitely discussed that. We did come back with staff, worked really diligently together to look at those conditions. And I think that we were able to come to a really amicable compromise to be able to add in the sidewalks, the park, the play structure, the shade structure requested, as well as the commitment of the 21st building permit for the multifamily to meet the housing element. So it appears that we've been able to retool and work really well to get to those compromises. So I don't have anything necessarily to add to that, but I will definitely, Rick is here with me. He's not on camera, but he's here. So I will see if he has anything to add. Do you have anything to add as far as the components here?
No, that, Greg wanted to be a part of this, but he just got called out to a job site, so he's leaving the building. But I'm here to answer any questions related to the modifications that were made.
Okay, council, do we want to go to public hearing or do you want to ask questions of either Rick or Tiffany right now? What's your preference?
I'm good going to public hearing.
All right, other two members, just nod if that's okay. Is that all right? Okay, thank you. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I am going to open the public hearing to receive public comment and consideration of Final Development Plan 2020-01 for Mission Village South Phases 5A and 5B for the project located at East Mercy Springs Road, south of Mission Drive, and north of Wilmount Avenue, more specifically identified as Assessor's Parcel 428-280-012. And is there anyone who would like to comment on this? Mr. Miller. Director Maloney, do we have any comments by email?
I just refreshed my email. We've received no comments.
Okay, is there anyone? What is that noise?
Everybody,
Okay.
can everybody
all right.
please mute their microphones if they're not speaking at the moment? You can unmute them when you're called on to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so is there anyone on the line of any of the callers who would like to comment at the public hearing on City Council Resolution number 6251? Any callers? Not hearing any. I will now close the public hearing. Bring it back to council level and council members. Questions?
Mayor, Councilman Furia, if Stacy or Tiffany, if they could do a very quick, just what are the changes for just the general public? What are the changes? What were the changes from when they brought it to us a month ago, and now the big changes, the major changes? If you could just do a quick explanation of that. I know you did a beautiful, detailed explanation, but just what are the major changes?
Sure. Actually, that if Tiffany, if you're okay, if I take that.
Sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I do want to highlight there was really 4 areas that the staff was recommending as conditions of approval from the last meeting. So I do want to highlight that because that did affect the revisions that were made. So first, we had a condition that the issuance of the building permit for the 21st single-family dwelling unit, the developer shall commence construction of the multifamily component of the project, which that condition was not revised. That condition remains, and the applicant is now satisfied. We wordsmithed it a bit, but the intent is still that at the 21st, prior to issuance of the 21st building permit, commencement will start with the multifamily first building. Second was that
Stacy, may I interrupt you just 1 minute? Okay, so the multifamily, just to be clear, that's a single phase?
The multifamily is the two 8-unit buildings. They're two-story buildings. They are their own lot, and are a part of Phase 5B.
Phase 5.
5B.
5B. All right. So at the 21st permit, what has to be constructed?
They have to commence with construction of the first building of the multifamily unit.
One building? And that
They have to
house,
start-
how many?
They had to at least start construction. And that was
Okay.
our intent, was that it didn't sit and wait till the end. They needed to start construction on the multifamily so that it would not sit as a vacant lot.
All right, it would not sit as a vacant lot. So how many units within that first building?
It's 8.
Eight buildings. And when is the completion?
So we will not issue the 21st until they commence, but we did not give a completion. The intent is that in good faith, the applicant would complete. They would not pull a building permit, pay fees that are required, all the impact fees as well, without completing the project.
Yeah, I want to complete that project because that could linger on for years. I'll tell you right now, that's a problem for me, because if that thing keeps lingering on and they just have to start construction, that doesn't cut it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, but I just want to reiterate that condition, the applicant, that was a condition previously, and the applicant has agreed to that condition. So there was no need for a revision. They agreed with staff's requirement. The second was that sidewalks shall be designed.
But where I'm going is, I'd like kind of a definitive date of when this is going to be completed. Is it going to complete it? How many units in the total project?
40 in Phase 5B.
40 in Phase 5. Okay, so I mean, they could conceivably finish all 40 units before those multifamily are completed. Is that correct?
So, and that's why we put it at issuance. They would have to pay their fees and invest in that construction on the front end with the multifamily, and therefore should put their feet to the fire to complete that project and get return on investment.
Okay, we'll talk some more. Go ahead.
Second was that sidewalks shall be designed and constructed per city standards, and they revised the final development plan to include sidewalks throughout. The third issue that we had was prior to occupancy of the first multifamily dwelling unit, a private park shall be constructed for the gated community, and they are providing a park. They designated a lot for the park, although it will be public park now, and they are not proposing a private park. And then the last was that the proposed park shall have, but not limited to, a play structure, a shade canopy, and picnic tables to the satisfaction of the Community and Economic Development Director. And within that park area, they are proposing all of those amenities. So I hope that addressed your comment, Councilmember Faria, of the issues that we had at the previous meeting, and then how the applicant revised their project to address those comments.
Yes, very much so. Also, and we still have 2 multifamily units in the whole project. Is that correct?
Yes, that did not change.
And this brings it in to a 7.75 units per acre. Is that what you said? And it has to be under 7 for R2.
Yes. So it brings it to 7.57 dwelling acre, and the minimum is 7. Yes.
Okay. I'll let the mayor address those concerns about completion, because that, as you think about it, completion is as important as commencement on those multifamily dwellings. So I'll leave that to the mayor to continue on that. Thank you.
Council members, questions? Mrs. Lewis, Mr. Jones? Mr. Jones, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it doesn't matter to me when that apartment gets built, because it's going to get built when the developer feels it's right, and basically it has to be able to turn a dollar for it to make sense. I mean, odds are if he builds a good product on his residential there, those could sell out faster than what he's through even laying out the full plans for the apartments. So they can all be sold, and he could be in the phase of building all the way to lot 40 before he even gets his contractor lined up for the apartment. So I'll let staff figure that one out. I would like to see the apartments there, but the timing of those, it just depends on the market. If the developer feels he's going to make some money off the rents on there, he's going to build them a lot faster. If there's no money involved with it, it might take a little longer, maybe take another year. So, but I do have a couple questions regarding some of the fences, if you want to talk about them now. Surrounding the apartments, what type of fence are we going to have? Are we going to have a block wall, masonry wall? So from the southeast wall or fence line or property line of lot 14, and then to the east of lot 15 where the apartments are, we're going to have a block wall there.
If you'd like to answer that question.
If I'm understanding, the question is if there's going to be a block wall along the lot 14 and multifamily, correct? That's the first question?
Correct.
Yes. And then the same would be along the other back side of the multifamily that will butt the other side of the single family residences to the east. I think we're oriented the same. There's also, just to depict, we additionally did an additional landscape buffer in those same areas along the multifamily to create an additional landscape buffer in addition to the block wall to create a barrier, because we know there is, single family residences that are going to be on either side. Does that answer your question?
That does for that. And so when we get up towards lot 25, when we tie into phase A, 5A, we're removing that fire gate out of there, right? So that's going to be open to Mission?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then between lots 37 and 38, we just have a dead end, not a cul-de-sac.
That's a gate.
That was
the EVA.
That's going to be a
That's
gate?
the EVA.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be EVA.
EVA.
So that was an original condition.
And we'll have a 30-foot access. Yeah, we'll have a 30-foot access to Wilmot, to the fire department.
Between 37 and 38, that ties into the commercial lot? Okay.
Yes. That will come out to the side of those out onto Wilmot.
Okay. And regarding the park, the fact that this is shifting from a gated community that would have an HOA, that the HOA would cover the cost of the park, to now the city would be responsible for covering the costs of the ongoing or never-ending costs of the park. I would like to see that park removed, just because it's just a maintenance burden for the city. So I've had enough of these pocket parks in town that the city's responsible for. And if it's not in the HOA, I'd like to see that lot A absorbed into the lot 15. Give you a little bit more space there in the apartments for parking or anything else you want to include in there. So that's all I have.
Mrs. Lewis, anything?
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
one thing I'd like to say before I get into my questions is going forward, and this is for Alex, when we have projects that have come before us and we've made major requests for revisions, I'd like to see it on the agenda where it states exactly what we've asked for and then what the applicant is willing to do. Because I guess by law, we have to have all this information in a packet. But the meat of the issue is, what did we ask for and what's been provided. And without us going to YouTube and looking at what we stated and what we said we wanted, we have no reference to anything. So that needs to be given to the council so that we know going into these projects that come back to us what it is that we ask for. I'm really thoroughly disappointed that this is no longer a gated community and that the HOA is going away. Because an HOA is something that governs a community within itself. It has its own committee, it collects its own fees, and if there's anything that's not appropriate within that community, the HOA handles it. If there's something that needs to be fixed based on the HOA contract, the HOA takes care of that. But now that's going away. And I have to agree with Councilman Jones. I'm not going to approve any project that has another park in it that we have to take care of. We've already met our standards for parks in the city of Los Banos, and this pocket park will be something that we'll be responsible for the rest of the life of the city of Los Banos. Sometimes I feel like we get set up with this stuff. We come into this project knowing what it was supposed to be, which was a gated community with an HOA, and at the end of the road, things are taken out, and now we're stuck with this without sending it back saying, work it out and bring us back a gated community with an HOA, something that's going to be nice for our community. That's what we asked for last time. And so this is what we get. And it's definitely not to my standard at all. We have no gate, and in my opinion, with no gate, no park, no approval from me. Now, we've got to stop negotiating away our rights as the city when we bring projects to our community just for the sake of bringing it. Our standards have to raise. And this is nothing against Mr. Hostetler. This applies to every single developer that comes in our city. We welcome them and we want to work with them, but we have to have standards for our city. And that's my position on it. So right now, as far as I'm concerned, if these things are going away, you're not going to get my approval on it. Because that's not what we were presented, and the thought that we were going to have a gated community, and just because we asked for sidewalks, then the gated community had to go away and the HOA had to go away. So is this how we see ourselves as a city? I'm going to leave it there for right now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Well, my comments are an HOA is a self-governing body. And with the HOAs, you can't add all the other things that the state of California wants you to add because it's within a city within a city. And it has more protections for the people moving there. We have something called in lieu of park fees, but I'm not sure how that works with an HOA community. For me, I mean, maybe I didn't catch this the first time, but I will tell you that I want some kind of specific date of when this is going to be finished, because over the years, and even before I got on the council, I watched R2 and R3 projects just drift away. They put them in and then they never get built. And just starting it and digging a hole for a foundation is not enough for me to get it finished. So I'd like some kind of certainty for a completion date, so people are going to have some options within that community. And for the HOA to go away, that's not in my wheelhouse right now either.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
Just kind of on a investment point of view here with the apartments. This developer may not even build the apartments. As long as it's zoned for that, he might end up selling it off to a developer that specializes in apartments that can do it a lot better, a lot more efficient, that will make it A+ community. We don't know. But here's the thing. If the market dipped overnight, went down, developer's not going to build, period. It doesn't matter what contract we have in place. They'll bust that. So I wouldn't get too fixated on when they're going to complete this, because the market will dictate when someone builds it. That's all.
Okay, I'm not interested in that right now. I'm interested in getting a variety of product for the citizens of Los Banos, and I can't move on that position. So I'm sorry. We have a bit of a disagreement, but in this case, I've watched these projects just go away over the years, and I'm not going to be part of that voting structure to have that done.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Rick Mummert, Benchmark Engineering. Let me try to answer some of the questions that have been presented. First of all, thank you, Mr. Jones, for your comment about the apartments. I've been involved in several apartment buildings recently, and I know what it takes and how long it takes to construct. We can commit to this. We can commit that we are going to commence the first apartment building within by the 21st permit. That building itself is going to take at least 9 months to construct, and that is if we can get PG&E on site and get everything. We're looking at 8 gas meters. We got electrical that we need to take to the building. So I believe comfortably that we can commit to that and finish that first building within 12 months of obtaining the building permit prior to the 21st.
By the 21st.
By the 21st permit. Okay? And then we'll go right into the second building when the first building's complete, and we'll complete that second building within 12 months after occupancy of the first building. So that's what I think is reasonable construction time. And I think in these times now, the only thing that I would qualify that we got our hands tied with the joint utilities, but if there's another COVID outbreak or something, there was construction sites that were shut down for 3 months at a time, that something like that catastrophic come up, then I would think that time would be extended for that purpose only. And that's more of like a state mandate or something like that, if there was a state mandate. Okay. The second thing is that Councilmember Lewis, I don't think we tried to pull anything over anybody's eyes. We went and we sat down with staff, Stacy and Mark, to try and figure out how we can make this thing work and commit to the 4 main items that we were asked to do. What became apparent was, and we talked about it in the first meeting, about the lending capabilities of those apartments. That's why we couldn't commit to any timeframes at that time. What the lender let us know is the lender was concerned about the HOA and the ability of one property owner of the HOA controlling 16 non-voting members, 16 tenants, and 1 vote, and 1 for which essentially would be 41 votes, right? There's 40 units, there's 40 lots plus 1 parcel for the apartments. Was that the only way that we're going to be able to get the lending on that is not to be in an HOA, and you didn't know that. We've tried to have discussions to get your thoughts, and you're exactly right. We don't want to have these discussions during open council meetings, but we reached out to several members just to try and get what they felt, and we weren't able to meet with anybody. Actually, except for Councilmember Jones. And we had discussions with Councilmember Jones. So it's not blindsided, but we're not given the opportunity to schedule a meeting at City Hall or wherever or have a telephone conversation or exchange an email to go over some of these things. So then the only opportunity we have is to discuss it at the public hearing. Okay, so that was the reason why we had to go away from the gated community to be able to secure the lending for the apartments, to be able to commit to a time frame to get those constructed. We provided the sidewalks.
I have a question before he completes. When the developer was looking at this project, had you gone to your lender and even considered what you're telling us now? Because if you had, then I wouldn't have even, I guess I would have considered as a developer, and I'm not, but I would think that that wouldn't be something I would want to put in the project, knowing that it would have been an obstacle. But if you gave us a project and said that this is what you want to bring to our city, and then go to your developer later and say, hey, you know, this is what we're going to do. I mean, your lender, and the lender says, well, this is not possible because of X, Y, and Z. And then you come back and you take away things in hopes that we have for our community and expect it to be okay with us. So yes, it sounds pretty harsh from me, but that's how it makes me feel as a council member. And I don't like those kinds of surprises.
I'm sorry that you feel.
I'd much prefer to see these things worked out before the project even came to the city. So you knew exactly what you had to work with in regards to your lending or anything else to make this project work. So I'm going to release my mind and let you finish.
Okay, thank you. Well, number one, I'm sorry you feel that way. Number two, I think Mr. Jones expressed it very at the last meeting and in this meeting. Our client's intent was to sell this and not build this apartment building. It's when he went to his lender and he decided that he wants to look at building these apartments himself is when we found this out. So his intent when we submitted it wasn't the same as it is today. His intent is to build these apartments. So.
If I could have a moment just to interject here to the council members, is no one's trying to pull a fast one. Absolutely not. The fact that we are coming back with a non-gated community is definitely because in finding out factors after the fact as we've kind of reoriented, reworked the subdivision, and also, yes, were we working with our bankers and lenders previously? Yes, but lenders are not giving you monies until obviously you have an approved project. And as we're having those discussions early on with them, this is information that we've become aware of very recently. And our lenders are basically advising us that a gated community is just not a compatible use within a single family community that is going to work within an HOA with a multifamily component. So that is our challenge that we're at. And in addition, a gated community, to my knowledge, is not a requirement of this project. And although it may be a desire, it's my understanding it's not a requirement of this project for the zoning, correct? And the sidewalks in the gated community wouldn't normally be required, but obviously we've been trying to rework a lot of this to make all of these components that were asked at the last council to rework them to make it all into this community. So that's why it's being represented in this fashion to be a public community, to create more circulation, to create the last piece of this Mission Village South, puzzle. That's the last piece of the pie out there. We're just wanting to complete it and get the project built. That's all I have to say on that. Do you have anything to add?
No.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have some questions.
Go ahead.
Whose idea was it originally for the HOA? Was that city or was that developer?
Developer with no sidewalks. And
It was obviously developer applicant suggestion, but it was also a suggestion without the park and without the sidewalks and without all of the additional conditions that were requested.
Okay. I mean, I'm still not a fan of this layout. It was, you know, I'm looking at the general plan map, and, you know, I don't know how we got to this size parcel. It seemed like it needed to be a bigger parcel in here with a little bit more space to be able to lay out these homes efficiently. It does kind of seem like a hodgepodge type development, but this is what we have to work with right now. You know, I wasn't a fan of seeing that separation on phase 5A. It just, you know, now with the gates gone, it does work a little bit better now that that street will wrap around on a mission. But yeah, it just seems like this was just a rough layout to begin with, and now we're just trying to make it function somewhat. I can't say, you know, 10, 15 years from now, we're going to look back at this development and say, wow, this was an awesome neighborhood. I can't say that at all, and I doubt that it's going to be that. It's just going to blend into some of these other neighborhoods, and that's it. So I don't know. I don't think there's much more we can do with this other than let's simplify it, keep the cost down, and go from there. That's all.
Well, I don't like crafting things on the fly. And what Rick said, that makes me feel a little better. And if that could be reduced to writing, Stacy Elms, I would feel better with that. And then come back to us with the full agreement with other council member suggestions. If we're going to have a park, we need to decide whether we're going to have a park or not have a park, because I don't want the city stuck for any more. We can't afford these. And if we're going to take it out, there's a park in lieu fee that can be paid to the city. And I need all this crafted in a document for me to feel good that, and then Mrs. Lewis's suggestion is a side-by-side, what we started with, I call this phase 2 tonight. And then if we bring it back, phase 3 of what the final development's going to look like. But it just bothers me because every time we craft something on the fly, we miss something, and then we say, why did we do that? So that's kind of where I'm at tonight. I'm not ready to move this forward. I'd like to see Rick Mummert's language incorporated, and I would go past 12 months, Rick. I would give you a month or so or two leeway to finish that and finish the first apartment building on the 21st permit, and then start the second one within so many months. And I could give you a couple extra months. 2 months either way is not going to make a difference to me, other than the fact that it's going to get done and it's not going to go away. So I think, you know, people's memories are good for now, but they're not good in 14 months. And I'd like to see some assurances in there. That's all I have to say.
So, Mayor, it sounds like the only thing that we've talked about changing was just removing that park out, or at least two of us have said that. You're on the fence. Councilmember Faria, I don't know where he stands on that, but if we're in agreement to delete out that park, just expand on lot 15, why does this need to come back in front of council?
Because the financing issue is a new project. It's a completely different project now. We didn't know about the financing to begin with, and things are being thrown in. And I'm just one vote. There are 4 votes here tonight. You know, I know where I stand. So that's it.
Well, Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Lewis, and I'll just reiterate, you know, perhaps they've met some of the requests that we made from the last meeting, but now we've got a different rollout where they've deleted things that we assumed were going to be in this, and we're asked to make a decision tonight on this. So again, I'll state my position. The gates have been removed. The gated community's been removed. The HOA's been removed, and the park is still in there. And I won't approve a project of this sort not being gated with a park. I'm not going to encumber the city with another park that they have to take care of. It just doesn't pencil out today. Not with what we have to deal with in our community. So, however the council decides, that's my position. I am not in favor of a park on a project that is going to be an open community, not gated, and with no HOA. And so, however, I guess we need to decide as a council whether or not we're going to let additional houses be built on that, or how we want that handled. But this is the 21st century, and you go to any city, it's not our job to work out finances or determine what financial position a developer is in. That's not our job. Our job as city council members is to make sure we bring our city the best projects, the best of what we have for our community and the residents who live here. And that's my expectation of any developer, anybody bringing a project to Los Banos. And I may be unpopular for that, but that's okay. That's where I stand. I just will not go backward as far as a council member in this community. I expect more. I expect more from our staff and what they bring to us with these projects. And I expect more from you, Alex, to make sure that it happens. So I'm not going to relent. And I may be the only vote tonight that will say no to this presentation as we have tonight. But I'm not going to give up on that. I have better hopes for the city of Los Banos. And I am never going to be in a position of trying to determine financially how a developer, whether it's commercial, residential, or any sort of development in our community, to determine what their finances are and how they are to build the project based on their finances. What I have to look at is what they present to us and whether it's going to fit the criteria, how we want our community to look. That's purely how I have to make my decisions. And so that's where I stand tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Faria, any further comments?
Yeah, I'm not ready to move this forward. Nowhere close. There's too many variables here. And I don't know if we're trying to do too much with this project. The idea of a park, we cannot afford more parks. When I asked for the park, I assumed it was going to be gated and HOA, that we were going to be, the city wouldn't be responsible to pay for that. If it were to be kind of a situation, then I like parks, but the city really can't afford to be paying for any extras right now, particularly in our present situation. Is there going to be a gated community there or not? We're trying to fulfill an R2 with a mixture of housing and apartments. And we're juggling this thing around. I think it needs more work before it comes back to council, because there are way too many questions that need to be resolved. And I think our staff can resolve them just fine. And our staff will stay in contact with us as they go through that. If they like, before they bring it to us, they always call us with questions about the agenda and what do we have to say and whatnot, and even before we get to an agenda. So, no, I'm not ready to move this forward yet. I'd like to see staff and the developer work out some kinks. And if we had to have some more conversations with our staff, council and staff, we can do that too. I don't believe in council negotiating with developers. That's not, in my opinion, the council's job. That's our staff's job. And they're professionals and they have all the details. And we are the ones to make the final decision. As Ms. Lewis said, we have to represent the citizens. We have to represent what we want our town to become as it grows into the 21st century. And we have a lot of making up to do. We have to make sure that everything we bring is exactly what we think is going to be up to our standard. So I'm not ready to move forward with this. My suggestion would be to send it back. If that needs a motion, you'll entertain that, whatever you want to do later. But those are my opinions. I hope I've been clear on that. Sorry, I'm not logged in with video. My iPad is too old to run the meeting And so I gotta upgrade my iPad before I can do visuals on my meetings. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Mr. Lewis Jones.
Rick Mummer, council, actually.
I'm sorry, Rick. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just in closing, our direction from the council for last meeting, and Tiffany and I did go through the video, the YouTube video, to make sure that we addressed everybody's comments, was to look at townhomes or duplexes, triplexes as an alternative for the apartment site. We were able to satisfy the city's condition relative to the 21st permit by what we did. And we gave council the sidewalks. We gave council the 21st permit. We didn't give you, we listened to you and provided it within the project. We provided a park at your direction, and I understand that it was, council was asking for a park because it was inside the gated community, but we didn't propose it. And then the shade structure was another one that we incorporated into the design of the apartments. But I think the biggest thing I want to reiterate is our client's finances has nothing to do with this. And we're not asking the city to finance anything. If the city doesn't want a park, we didn't propose a park initially, and we'll pay our park mitigation fees like any other permit that we pull that doesn't have a park within the project. But I agree with Mr. Jones. I don't know how much we've changed other than what you've asked us to do, other than the gated community. By removing the gated community, the homeowner association went with it. If you look at that intersection of Wilmot and Street A, that landscaped area is now not behind a gate, but all that open space and lawn and beautiful landscaping that you see within the exhibit that Stacy showed you is going to be the entrance to it. It's just not gated and it's not private, but you're still going to have the same landscaping there, and the quality of those apartment buildings and that entrance to that community is going to domino effect into the other property owners, and I would hope it would be an incredible project. But I agree with Mr. Jones. I don't know if we have to go back, and I think we can craft the language in a condition like we do sometimes related to the timing of the apartment buildings. So I would respectfully request that we not continue it and try and, we think we've addressed what the council asked us to. Thank you.
Mayor, may I say something?
Go ahead.
Councilmember Faria, you said you had questions still. What are those questions? Because the way I see it, this is going to come back in a couple weeks, and it's going to have one park deleted out, and it's going to look pretty much the same thing as what it's at. I'm just not a fan of wasting any more time on this.
Well,
so what are those questions that you have?
Through the mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. There are obviously concerns from council. I don't see a reason to rush any project. And if the council, as many members of the council are not satisfied or with the way things are going and the way it's being done, the changes were brought back. The gated community was done away with, and that was a major change because that changed the whole financing for that park, and it also changed the whole perception of the project. So Ms. Lewis has a number of issues, and I respect those issues, and the mayor has issues which seem maybe those could be with the apartments could be resolved tonight, but it sounds like Ms. Lewis's issues could not be, and I respect that. I respect my fellow council members and their views, and I want to see this thing done in such a way that the representatives of the community, the city council, is satisfied with what's happening, and I don't see a need to rush the project. And those are my answers. And whatever questions you had, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I didn't hear one question that you had on that. Just deferring to Councilmember Lewis's concerns.
Okay. All right. So where we're at is I need a little direction here. Alex, do we take a vote to see if there's a first and a second and an approval as per the agenda item, or what do we do knowing the feelings of the council?
I think Stacy I'm hoping I'm off mute. I think Stacy laid out some options. So Stacy, do we need to bring up the slide with the options, or can you walk us through those at this point? Stacy, you're on mute.
Thank you. I'm sorry. The four options. The first would be if the council wanted to adopt the resolution, which it doesn't sound that's the direction from the council. The second option would be to approve the final development plan for 5A only, phase 5A, which is the 10 single-family residential units on Mission Drive. The third option would be I'll back up with option 2. That would mean a redesign for 5B. So no approval for 5B would require a redesign. 5A was not a part of the gated community, and was just a part of the 10 single-family units. Option 3 would be to continue the public hearing and then direct the applicant to redesign the entire project consistent with the comments provided tonight. That would probably require a revision to go back to the Planning Commission for their recommendation. And then last would be denial. And denial of the project, staff would ask that the project be brought back at the next City Council meeting so that we could bring a resolution with findings for denial.
But could it still be approved if other conditions were met?
Yeah, so if the council, and it sounds like the council is headed more towards option 3, which is to direct the applicant to redesign the project. It sounds like the components of the gated community, if I'm hearing the majority, the gated community is desirable with the HOA. And if it is a gated community, then the park component is okay. If it is an open public community, then the park component needs to be removed, is what I'm hearing. So it sounds like option 3, or it could be a hybrid with 2 and 3 if the council decides that 5A really has no issues, and the final development plan could approve that architecture for those 10 units. The applicant could move forward with just that phase and then redesign phase 5B.
What's the council's pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, I have some questions of Stacy, please.
Go ahead.
And maybe, the applicant might be able to assist in answering this. This is a mixed community. The way it's set up now and the way the zoning is for this land, does it have to stay a mixed community this way?
So with the mixed community, you're referring to the multifamily with the single-family residential, that mixture. It does to meet the density. If the single-family residential component is still to stay, those 10, which is the 10 in 5A plus the 40 in 5B, if those are to remain as single-family residential, the only way to boost the density to be able to get up to 7 at a minimum, we do need a multifamily component. And that's why the apartments were included. And that barely got them to the minimum of 7.57. Without multifamily, I don't think that they're going to be able to get that density. Otherwise, they're going to have to do something different with the remainder piece, with the 40 single family. They're either going to need to make smaller lots, they're going to have to do 0 lot lines, they're going to have to do attached, duets, or an option. They can do anything up to a triplex. But that is why it was laid out the way it was.
Okay, so the apartments seem to be the big issue here, at least with me, and taking away the gated community part. So and this is, just a question I have, there are two questions. There's a side where if the developer wanted to just build apartments in there and do away with the R1s, is that something, that can be done? I don't know if that is feasible for the developer. Or if we just do zero lot line attached homes, a different kind of component in there so that we can keep a gated community. Because I'm sure there are enough people who want to have that kind of lifestyle, to have that security within a gated community, don't mind paying the HOAs, and have a private park within their community that's just for their community. And right now, all we have in Los Banos are 2 55 and older communities that have that component. So I'm just presenting this as an alternative. Do we actually have to have the apartments in there? Can we do a different kind of structure in there that you're suggesting, so that this whole issue about apartments, when they're built, how to get a financing and all that stuff kind of goes away? And is it easier for them to do this and move forward with their financing if we did zero lot line attached homes or a mixture of that kind of stuff within the community in order to have the gate, the HOA, and the park?
I think that would be a question for the applicant, whether they can make that layout. Certainly that is a part and is allowed in the district. The PD overlay allows the multifamily, because a multifamily would not typically be allowed in the R2. So it allows that. That's where the flexibility is being given in being allowed to have that multifamily. But the district itself is designed for attached single family and detached. It's designed for that zero lot line, designed for duplexes and triplexes. That's its intent.
Well, we don't really have that kind of component in Los Banos, so this might be something new that we could look at. And I'm just presenting that as an idea out there. So I'm just hoping that the developer staff, reporting back to the developer and working with our staff, can possibly look at that. Because, as this stands, even from the beginning, and I would go along with the apartment with the other things that we were presented in the beginning, but it was still an odd community. It was just really odd to stick a couple of apartments inside of an R1 community. It's basically an R1 community, and you're getting, your numbers because of these 2 apartment buildings that are being put in there. But if you can build a different kind of community where you have, the duplexes, or a fourplex, I don't know that fourplexes would sell that well inside of a gated community, but duplexes would, where there's a common wall, might sell better, and maybe a few detached homes within it could be accommodating. But I just think that a gated community, starting to have gated communities within our city is something that's more desirable, and those standards can be held within that community. If they have a park, the maintenance of that park is totally up to that community. It does not affect the city of Los Banos. And there's no way that they can back out of it, because once these units sell, that HOA has to develop its own committee to move forward. And of course, whatever they decide how the HOA is going to be organized and the fees charged initially is what it is. But the governing board can decide over time as to what, those fees, how those fees have to be raised to cover the cost of doing the maintenance within the community. And what are they going to maintain? Is it just the park? Is it going to be the sidewalks, all of that stuff. That's, you know, they have to do that. And I have a son that lives in an HOA, and they repave the streets. The HOA is responsible for repaving those streets. You know,
So you want to collect?
They take care of all of that. They take care of the front yard maintenance. The backyard maintenance is up to the resident. But there's certain things that different HOAs require their residents to do. So that might be an alternative in regards to what we're looking at right now. So I'm just throwing that out there as a olive leaf. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So are there any other questions? Are there
I'm sorry.
any other questions from council?
Mr. Mayor, can I make a statement? I just want to address, again, Councilmember Lewis's questions and comments. With all due respect, this project, again, it's not a requirement of this project to be a gated community with an HOA. And yes, it was originally presented in that capacity, but as there was requested modifications from last council for this project, we have complied with those modifications. And yes, we have also modified it with the presentation to make it a public subdivision. We did not want the park to begin with. That was at the request of the council. But what we're hearing tonight is that the council still wants a park, but as long as an association is going to incur the cost of it, which we shared at the last council, was a challenge for an association to incur that cost. But we're hearing tonight that it's a challenge for the city to incur that cost of the maintenance within itself. And we understand, and we totally agree with that. We would like to not have any park, just as you would, but we would like this project, we would like it to go forward a non-gated community. We're not going to represent it as a gated private community. So I'm in no way trying to implore to the council that it is the council's responsibility or problem of what our financial obligations are or aren't. All we're doing is sharing what our challenges are in order to meet the compliance of what the council's requests have been from the last council. So that's why we've come back again tonight, meeting those requests, and we feel like we have met those requests. So with regards to the actual zoning, I'm actually going to turn this over to Rick, because he can speak more eloquently to the zoning of knowing the history of it.
Thanks, Tiffany. I don't know about eloquence, but I'll give it my best shot here. Okay, so in the city of Los Banos' general plan, this is not a single-family residential development. R2 zone, the first words within your general plan for R2 zone is single-family detached, small lot, 2,000 square feet to 5,000 square feet. The majority of these lots are in the range of 4,000 square feet. So this is allowed, even though it's single-family detached, it is allowed within the R2 zone. It also, the next wording is it allows multifamily. Your R2 in your general plan goes from 7 units per acre to 18 units per acre. If I filled up this whole site without apartment buildings that we're proposing, we'd be at a density of about 15. So we don't even reach the top half of your medium density residential, which does allow multifamily. The other thing is if I was sitting on that council or planning commission, I'd rather see a project like this where you have homeowners come in, where you could actually park in front of your lot or your home versus a duplex or a triplex, which is not going to be able to fit hardly any cars. Your street's going to be full. You have a project, Deborah, approved or Council Member Lewis, at Rocket Club in San Luis Street. That is a project that's mixed with duplexes and triplexes. It's an eyesore over there, and it hasn't been able to get off the ground for 20 years. That's one that's been sitting for 20 years entitled. The streets are in. The final map was never recorded because the property owner didn't pay his property taxes. But I would rather see something like this than something like that. But I think if you review the general plan, it doesn't promote. It may say something about duplexes and triplexes, but it mainly talks about multifamily, single-family, detached, small lot. And when you get into the small lot, you have smaller lots. And so I agree. We've talked about all the other stuff, but I think if you all go back and look at and you do take a look at the minutes or the YouTube, I think we've complied with what you asked us for. We did take the gated community off the table, and I think it's going to stay off the table.
Well, with all due respect, I hear you, and you may have met the requirements that we asked for, but you took something away which we were in favor of, and that's where I feel like we've been taken advantage of. It feels to me like a switch and bait, and you may not agree with that, but I'm the council person, not you. And so I'm going to stick to my guns, and what I said is what I meant. And I do like the gated community. Now, we've made some suggestions up here because if this council approves what's been sitting before us tonight, then, I've already stated it's not going to get my vote, not being a gated community and some of the things that you proposed, because that's what you came to us with, regardless of whether or not you had to provide it or not. That's what you presented that carrot to us. Now you're throwing the stick at us. So, be it as it may, this is my opinion, and I don't really want to rehash over and over again the selling point of what you've provided. You've also taken away, and now you're telling us you're not going to give it. So that's my feeling, and I'm entitled to that as a council member. Okay, Mr. Mayor, you can have it back.
Thank you. So I'm in no way suggesting denial of the project. So I think Stacy, option 3 was the one that possibly, if a council member wants to make the recommendation, that we work with the suggestions, continue the public hearing, and direct the applicant to redesign the project consistent with comments from the city council. It may need to go back to the planning commission for recommendation. I said may need, not sure, depending upon the depth. So council members, if we have any council members that are happy with that suggestion, the one I just read, I would need a motion or come up with some other voting element that we need to tackle tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make that motion if I could.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to move to continue the public hearing and direct the applicant to redesign the project consistent with comments from the city council. And if it may need to go back to planning commission for recommendations, so be it. And that is my motion.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been motioned by Faria, second by Lewis.
May I interject, please? Could you continue it to a date certain?
Yes, Stacy, why don't you give me a suggestion?
Based on the schedule of the planning commission, I believe that the soonest I would be able to get this back before the planning commission would probably be in October. So if we could bring this back the first meeting in December.
In December or November?
December would give us time to redesign, and it would just be a window just in case I needed November for the planning commission. Otherwise, we can continue the project and direct the applicant to redesign and close the public hearing. That way we re-advertise. Continuing the public hearing to a date certain just opens the public hearing, so we don't need to re-advertise. But with the lapse of time, I think it's in our best interest just to redo the public hearing notice and let the public know that the project will be coming back when it's ready. To give you a date now, I would want to give us enough time. So I would say that first meeting in December would be when to come back to the city council based on needing to go back to the planning commission, but also needing to have time to sit down with the applicant and go through the various alternatives.
But it could be shorter.
It could be.
Okay, depending upon, okay. Mr. Freya, are you good with reissuing the public hearing and as a final date of a date certain, but earlier of the first meeting in December?
Yes, it'll be brought back no later than the first meeting in December. Is that the way we'll work?
Yes. Mrs. Lewis, do you agree to that?
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the motion as stated to bring it back no later than the first meeting in December and reissue the public hearing, which may need to go back to the Planning Commission. Okay, so we have a motion by Faria and then amended by Faria and second by Lewis, and the amendment was also approved. And so let's vote. Faria?
Yes.
Jones?
Yeah.
Okay, Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Yes, and Villalta, yes. Okay? Thank you so much, everyone.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Rick Bummer.
Yes.
I was wondering, as a separate action, do we consider option 2 also, that relieves the 10 lots that are fronting Mission Drive for the architecture as staff presented to council? We've had building permits being held up for that action for almost a year now.
Yes, I understand. City Attorney Vaughn is, I think we need to decide whether it's going to be a gated community or not, I think, before we go forward with anything else, or do you have a different opinion?
5A was never gated. 5A was never gated. 5 is a separate project. I would defer to Stacy as to whether it's integrated into the new direction. If it's not integrated into the new direction, I think you can go with Stacy's recommendation to approve that item. That's number 2.
Right. So that's option number 2. It actually, 5A does not have any bearing on 5B. 5A is outside of the gated community, would not be a part of the gates, is not affected by whether there are gates or no gates. So if that is at the pleasure of the city council, we can approve. It would actually be resolution number 6251 for phase 5A only. And staff, that's a matter of a text change that staff can implement at the pleasure of the council.
And Stacy, are we missing anything if we approve this tonight?
No, 5A is on its own merit. It's its own phase. It has the architecture that's built into the final development plan that's before you tonight, but it has no bearing on any of the direction given tonight, whether it's private, whether it's gated, whether there's a park, whether there's multifamily. It actually has no bearing on any of that discussion.
So it's completely independent of all the comments that were made about a possible gated community or not gated community, a park, sidewalks, and everything else, correct?
Yes, it already has sidewalks. It already has infrastructure. It's ready to plug and play.
Okay. Wait a minute, one person at a time. Please, one person at a time. I'll let you talk. All right, was that you, Rick?
No, that wasn't me.
Okay, who wanted to talk? Raise your hands.
Sorry, Alex. It was me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Alex, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I think that might offer a good compromise to allow at least a portion of the project to move forward while we work with the applicant to to make some tweaks on the project. So that's my only comment.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, sorry, this was Tiffany Marshall.
Go ahead, Tiffany.
The only thing that I was going to comment on was just that 5A was a totally separate map, a totally recorded separate map. That was it. Thank you.
All right. Stacey, how many homes is that?
10.
10? Okay. All right. So, council members, do I have a motion? Could you put the choices back up again so we get it right? So approve final development plan 2020-01 for only Mission Village South Phase A. Stacy, is that correct?
Yes. 5A.
Okay. 5A. And is that that's 6251? Is that correct?
Yes. And I will change the text to, as a part of the header, it will say Mission Village South Phase 5A.
Okay.
So 6251 will now read approving final development plan number 2020-01 for Mission Village South Phase 5A.
For 10 homes?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have everyone who wants to make, you don't have to restate the motion, but who would like to make that motion?
Yes, Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Okay,
Approving, all right, you guys got it.
As read, Mr. Jones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, as read, yeah, 5A.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Lewis, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Okay, it's been motioned by Jones, second by Lewis for the approval of the motion made. I'm not going. It's 6251 5A. Is that correct, Stacy? Okay, exactly right. Mr. Vaughn, do you have any comment, or is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion by Jones, second by Deborah Lewis. It's read by title. And Faria?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Villalta, yes. Okay, Tiffany and Rick, thank you so much, and thank you for the suggestion. I think at least we have a compromise tonight.
Yeah, thank you for the consideration.
Thank you all so much.
And thank you for listening to us. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay. Good night. Okay, let's go on to item 8, shopping cart ordinance update. Information only. Who are we going to for shopping carts?
It'll be me again, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
We have a PowerPoint presentation. And this is just an update to the council on what has been done so far for the implementation of the shopping cart ordinance. First slide, please. Next slide. There we go. So the city council adopted an urgency ordinance, which was 1184, which became effective immediately. And this was for the regulation of shopping carts. And then ordinance number 1185 was not challenged. That was the regular ordinance, and that's really the actual regulation of the shopping cart ordinance. So after the immediate effect of the shopping cart ordinance, staff did provide a letter to all retailers that own shopping carts and or shopping baskets to notify the businesses of the new ordinance change. We provided the mandatory retention measures. We outlined them, we wrote them down, as well as the mandatory sanitation measures. And we provided each of those retailers a copy with the new ordinance. Next slide. As a recap, just to refresh the council's memory, the mandatory retention requirements, it first off requires signs on the shopping cart. So as part of that signage, the retailer needs to let patrons know who owns the shopping cart, where the shopping carts can be returned to, and a telephone number or an address of where the shopping carts can be returned. There is also signage on the property that says removal of shopping carts from the premises is prohibited by law. Also, as a part of that ordinance, it requires a condition of issuance of each business license for every cart owner on or before January 1st, 2021 shall install, operate, and maintain on-site retention. So that is at a minimum. They have to have their own on-site retention. And then every cart owner shall lock or otherwise secure all shopping carts during the hours when the business premises are not open for business, and shall lock or otherwise secure all the shopping carts not in service and stored on the premises. So that provision was put in to make sure that shopping carts didn't go off of the premises while the business was closed and no one was watching. The second part of the ordinance relates to cleaning and sanitation. The ordinance requires mandatory regular scheduled sanitation. This is a monthly sanitation. This is for every shopping cart and or shopping basket. This measure is to be implemented immediately. So that became effective right away. The ordinance does define what is clean and sanitized. And then this is to be done no less than monthly. And the options that retailers have are that they can use on-site cleaning and or sanitizing systems, or they can pressure wash and sanitize, or steam clean and sanitize, or another measure as approved by the Community and Economic Development Director. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. Implementation. So each business that operates with a shopping cart or shopping basket has been conditioned with their business license renewal to provide mandatory retention measures and mandatory regular scheduled cleaning and sanitizing of carts and or baskets. So as business licenses since the implementation of this ordinance have been cycling through, we have been conditioning each of those business licenses to be in compliance with both the retention measures as well as the sanitation and cleaning measures. Second, code enforcement as well as Community Economic Development Department, we've been providing outreach to each business with carts and shopping baskets to check for compliance. Code enforcement has canvassed and is physically gone to each of those businesses and provided them a form, which is essentially an attestation form regarding the following. They are to confirm and validate implementation of the ordinance. They are to list their retention measures in accordance with the ordinance, and they are to confirm mandatory regular scheduled cleaning and sanitizing measures and what they're doing to comply, and then they have to list those sanitation measures and then validate their form. In order for us to continue to renew business licenses, we are requiring this form to be signed by either the property owner, the business owner, or a general manager. And that is, as we're moving forward, we are requiring that attestation to be on file with the Community and Economic Development Department before renewing any business license. Also, code enforcement is following up and making sure that they have received, as well as myself, a copy of these forms. And though I will say that all of the retailers have been positive and in compliance with the city and the city's request. We've not received any negative feedback. They've all understood and have been thus far in compliance. So with that, next slide. That really concludes the presentation. It was just a short, brief update on what's going on with the shopping cart ordinance and to be able to answer any questions that the council has.
Okay, council members, are there any questions of Stacy's presentation?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
On that last page, one of the components or bullet points was that they were to confirm their mandatory regular schedule cleaning and sanitizing. Well, yeah, okay. So all these things that they're supposed to confirm, how do they do that process with the city?
Essentially, on the form we've put the ordinance essentially into a form, and they are to tell us. They actually have to sign with initial each section of the retention measure. They understand each retention measure, and that they understand each of the sanitation measures. So they have to initial that they've read and they understand. And then they have to provide us a list of all of their retention measures and how they are complying with the ordinance, as well as all of their sanitation measures and how they are applying with the ordinance. And we've listed what the ordinance says is compliance, or we give them an option to fill in their own compliance, which would need to be approved. I've not had anyone provide their own suggestion. Each of them are using what is listed in the ordinance as permissible.
Okay, maybe I'm confusing the term confirm with, actually showing the city some sort of confirmation that they're actually doing it. So I think when we passed this ordinance, it was kind of based on a good faith method that they were going to comply. I guess that's the word that I probably should have used with doing these measures, and the regular schedule cleaning and sanitizing. I would assume they send this form back to the city that they understand that they're going to do these things, but what do we have in place that tells us that they're complying with the measures that we've outlined for them to do? And especially with the cleaning, I believe in the body of the ordinance, it indicated that they had to clean at a minimum once a month, those shopping carts. Steam clean and sanitize them. So I guess I'm concerned as to how they're reporting to us. Have they given the city, some of these smaller or big stores or any of them, a schedule of when they do these regular cleanings?
They've just confirmed that they are providing monthly regular scheduled cleaning. But if it's at the pleasure of the council, we can add that to the form and ask that of the retailers to provide the actual date monthly. Whether it's the fourth week of the month, it's the fourth Monday of the month, or when it is that it is scheduled for that cleaning, or to provide us a receipt of their contract with that service. I would think signing, attesting, confirming on the form under penalty of perjury that they are doing, that this is when they're contracted and this is when they're conducting that sanitation, that they are promising us that they're confirming that that is what they are doing, and that we can follow up on that fourth Monday to make sure that each of the carts are sanitized.
And the only reason I ask is it's not that I'm not trusting them, and maybe a part of me is that way. I think in the times that we live in today, the handshake and the word of a person sometimes can be questionable when it comes to these big corporations. There are other issues that we've had with them, and then we've had to push hard on them, and they've not done it. So it would make me feel more comfortable, and certainly I'll ask the other council members if when they, on the form that we develop and send out to them, if they can indicate to us when these when the sanitizing of the shopping carts is supposed to happen, I certainly would feel more secure about that. And that way, if it's going to be every fourth Wednesday, Monday, or whatever of any particular month, if staff happens to be out there and wants to see that this is being done, there can be some eyes out there to make sure that it's done. And I'm not saying to go after them and hit them with a stick, because it didn't happen on that Monday or whatever. But if it continues to not happen as they said that they were scheduling to do it, then maybe we need to work with them on some reminders that this is what they provided. Or if they want to change their date, then they can change their day of the month to a different day. I just want to make sure that it happens because we don't have any state mandate at this point for something like this to happen. And it was important to me for our community, being in the COVID era and moving forward with flu season, which we have every year, that our shopping carts are safe for our residents when they go shopping. And I really appreciate what I see happening with our businesses, that they are wiping down the handles again before they give the carts out to buyers that go into their businesses. But the bigger portion is that sanitizing, and you're still putting your products in a shopping cart, the bed of the shopping cart, and questioning whether or not that's been sanitized, at least on that monthly basis. So that's my take on it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments on that subject?
None from me.
Okay, Mr. Jones?
I'm good, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Lewis, I could support that, because I have to tell you that every time I go someplace or attend a meeting on Zoom or talk to someone, and that's referring to the county health department, that's referring to the Merced County Office of Education, and that is referring to our hospital, how grateful they are to the city of Los Banos and the city council and staff for the things that we've implemented. And our case number, yes, I'll explain a little bit about that in a few minutes, but we have helped to not have as many cases that we possibly could have, and asking them to do an attestation is not a problem for me. Alex, do you want to talk?
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I think we can go ahead and make that change to that form just based on what we're hearing. We'll go ahead and do that.
Okay. Mr. Freya, Mr. Jones, you okay with that too? You can just nod. Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. You can't nod, Mr. Freya. I can't see you. So.
You can hear me. I'm nodding.
Okay, thank you. I heard your name.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis.
Okay. Thank you. All right, any other comments on the shopping cart ordinance update? Well, Stacy, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, let's go on to item 9, designation of voting delegate and alternate for the 2020 League of California Cities, LCC, annual conference being held virtually October 7 through 9, 2020. Designate a council member, Johnson Santos as the voting delegate, and City Manager Terrazas as the alternate voting delegate. Well, I'm good with that. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion by the mayor and second by Mr. Freya. Mr. Freya?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
And Walter, yes. Don't miss a meeting. You get volunteered for something. Okay, let's go on to item 10. Community choice aggregation technical study briefing and potential next steps for the city of Los Banos. Receive staff report and direction from the city council on how to proceed. Who's going to take this one?
This is me again.
Go ahead.
I apologize. So quite a bit from me tonight, but this is the last item. So we have Peninsula Clean Energy, a technical study that was conducted by Peninsula Clean Energy. And as you may recall, the City Council, back in September of 2019, the City Council directed staff to investigate the study of CCAs for the city of Los Banos. CCAs are, that acronym stands for Community Choice Aggregation. And they are typically formed to offer customers an energy choice, cheaper electric rates, and a higher percentage of renewable energy than is otherwise provided by PG&E. So back in September of 2019, we received a presentation from Peninsula Clean Energy. They are a CCA in California. And at that time, it was right before the groundbreaking of the Wright Solar Project, which is right here outside of the city of Los Banos. So staff did reach out to not only Peninsula Clean Energy, but also other CCAs in California to learn more about how CCA works, and to assess the city's options with respect to governance, management, potential rate savings, and greenhouse gas reduction impacts and other considerations. Then in the spring of 2020, I believe it was around March, Peninsula Clean Energy invited the city to participate in a technical study that would consider Los Banos' load, our rate impacts, and whether CCA in some form would be advantageous to Los Banos electric customers. So that technical study has been conducted, and tonight representatives from Pacific Clean Energy are going to be providing a presentation. I also just want to highlight for the city of Los Banos why possibly a CCA could be a good choice for the city of Los Banos. We're going to hear the pros and cons from the technical study tonight. But one goal that the city can achieve, a part of joining a CCA, would be the reduction of our greenhouse gas emissions. That's an important goal of the city. It's a goal, an overall goal within our general plan, and will be a big goal to achieve within our general plan update. There are legislation and laws, SB 743, which will be taking level of service, which is used for traffic analysis in CEQA, and it's going to be vehicles, miles traveled. And that is going to affect the city. And so unless the city can implement a partnership with the CCA to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, when we move from using a level of service to a VMT for CEQA analysis, the city's going to have some challenges. So we need to start thinking about what strategies we can implement to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And we are required to reduce per SB 32 those emissions to 40% below the 1990 level by 2030. So it's a big goal within our general plan, and this potential option could be a good strategy for the city of Los Banos to achieve. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Marshall and Jan Pepper and Mark from Peninsula Clean Energy.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Jen. And hi, Sean. Welcome. And you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for having us at your council meeting tonight. It's really great to see all of you again. And hope you're all staying safe and healthy. It looks like everyone's at home. So an interesting year we're having. So as the slide here shows, the options tonight. Oh, whoops.
Next slide, please.
Looking for a different slide set.
Jan, can you see the slides there, or are you locked up a bit?
I do, but the slide I'm seeing says is about the Mission Village South project.
Oh gosh.
Am I seeing? Everyone else is seeing?
Frozen. We can see the presentation agenda.
Yes, that's what we see.
Yes, that's what I see too.
So I'm seeing the wrong thing, huh?
You're in past, Jan.
So is the first slide that you see, does it say Peninsula Clean Energy CCA briefing?
Yes.
Oh, presentation agenda? Okay, I'll just look at my slides, even though what I'm seeing online here for some reason is not right. So there's four parts to what we're doing tonight, and we'll try to be as concise as we can. First, to talk about the recommended council actions and the government management discussion, to go over the results of the technical study, which Mark Fulmer will be going over, to discuss the risks and mitigations, which Sean Marshall will be going over, and then to review the timeline and the next steps. So if we go to the next slide called Recommended Council Actions, tonight you'll be receiving the results of the Community Choice Aggregation Technical Study conducted by MRW and Associates, and Mark Fulmer is here to present those results. And then we hope that you will direct staff to proceed with the next steps related to membership with Peninsula Clean Energy. The next slide, the Los Banos PCE opportunity. What we see as the advantages and the opportunities for you. First, it was a low cost to participate in this technical study. You contributed $5,000 to it. PCE contributed about $25,000 to it. And as you'll see, there's no cost and minimal time required to join this Joint Powers Agency. We'll be offering you a seat on the PCE Board of Directors. You'll have access to power generated by Wright Solar. You will get the 5% discount on generation charges that all Peninsula Clean Energy customers are enjoying right now. And overall for San Mateo County, that has amounted to $55 million of savings over the last 4 years that people have not paid to PG&E, but have instead had in their pockets to invest in other things. There will also be funding for local programs to meet your local needs. And we would also be looking to have a local staff representative to do outreach and be feet on the ground in Los Banos. So since the June 3rd council meeting, which is the next slide, slide 5, we have done the technical study. We've looked at within Peninsula Clean Energy's board itself. We have assessed whether there's alignment of goals and what the governance and management options are. We've had numerous check-in calls with the staff, with Stacy and Rudy and Alex. And in fact, Alex participated and attended the Peninsula Clean Energy board meeting on August 27th and was asked a number of questions and gave a lot of comments, which was really great to see happen. And then we have the timeline and the roadmap for potential membership and customer enrollment, and we'll go over the technical study. So as far as goal alignment goes, our goals for Peninsula Clean Energy are to expand in Merced County and the Central Valley. Just overall, we would like to see CCAs expand so that more people in the state are able to enjoy lower rates and cleaner power. Because we actually peak in the winter time, we have more electricity usage in the winter and you have more electricity usage in the summer. There's a complementary load between our two agencies. And then there's also legislative and regulatory advantages to have more people engaged in CCAs and be able to note those at the legislature. On your side, will be access to funding for customer energy programs and other local economic development opportunities, including looking at opportunities to put more renewable energy installations in your city. And then shared as all of our customers will be sharing the rate savings, reduced GHG reductions, access to the output from the Wright Solar project and other new renewable projects that will be coming along. We reviewed 3 different government and management options, and maybe I'll turn this over to Sean now to talk about this and the projected timeline, and then I'll join in again when we get to the end of the presentations.
Okay, super. Thank you, Jan, very much. I will keep this brief. Thank you for having us, council members. So over the last couple of months since we last met with you in June, we researched and evaluated a couple of different governance and management options. I should say that item 3, the formation of a separate JPA to serve Merced County, did not advance. So that one we didn't spend a lot of time on that for 2 reasons. One, it was just very clear that there was not a lot of appetite for the investment required to get a new JPA off the ground. In addition, there were not other Merced-based communities that wanted to move ahead at this time. So that one was put in the parking lot. And so we really spent our time researching options 1 and 2. And within the membership alternative, we looked at both a fully integrated membership and then what we call sort of the partial membership, which considered things like separated accounting, separate programs, some shift in potential governance and voting. And we looked at what that would look like and how it would work. And Alex and Stacy, I believe, have received the matrix that was done back in August for the PCE board. And at the end of the day, the partial model, if you will, that option was going to turn out to be extraordinarily burdensome from an administrative point of view, but also from a cost point of view, because what we came to understand was that it would be very difficult to just do a standard allocation of costs across Los Banos' load versus what would we consider direct costs. And so there was just a lot of discussion about how that would actually work. And for the size of the load and everything else, it turned out that it was going to require a tremendous amount of duplicate effort. And so the board decided that the best path forward for both parties, and we did look at this from your point of view as well in terms of cost and risks to the city in these various options, that the best option for both parties is going to be the full membership option, which is how it has been done in other parts of the state with CCAs that have brought on new communities. So it has worked well. We know how to do it, and it works well for all the parties. The second option was the outsourced contract for service option, which would require that the CCA be embedded within the city of Los Banos. You would run it as an enterprise fund, which would be the legal structure. When we looked at that alternative, the fact is that was going to cost Los Banos a lot more money. And the reason for that is that all of those upfront costs, the costs of long-term power contracting and other significant expenses would have to be borne by the city of Los Banos, even under a contract arrangement. In addition, that one fell out in terms of favorability because you do not have the joint and several liability protection that you have with the JPA structure. In this case, there is no firewall, a legal and financial firewall between you as the member agency and the CCA because it's an internal function. So the winner ultimately became full membership in PCE. I hope that, Jan, you don't mind me saying that the board of directors has asked us to come to you this evening and extend an offer of membership if you decide to move forward. For the next slide, I'll be really quick, and then we're going to turn it over to Mark for the technical stuff. I want to just focus your attention on 4 of the key dates. Here we are, September 16th. Should you choose to move forward tonight, and we certainly hope you do, we would come back to you in October, whether that be the 7th or the 21st, whichever of your council meetings, to take a go, no-go vote about whether to join PCE and form a CCA. So that's really, that is the critical vote next month. Then on October 22nd, the PCE board would adopt the JPA amendments that would be required to bring you on as a member, and a resolution approving your membership, subject to whatever you do prior to that. If everything is all moving forward, you would identify a board liaison to PCE. That person would be seated at the November 19th board meeting. We would then prepare an updated implementation plan, which is a statutory requirement for the state. Now, that would be adopted by the new board, including the Los Banos rep, on December 17th, because that must be submitted by the end of the year in order to launch service and begin serving customers in 2022. If you miss that, it's actually January 1st, but if you miss that deadline with the PUC, then you're kicked out to 2023. So there's a reason for the tight timing there. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks. Maybe are there any questions before we move to Mark's presentation?
You know, Jan, it's all legal jargon, and I would defer to, before we move on, defer to our city manager and our city attorney just to make sure that they are clear in what we're voting on and do they accept those terms. This is far above my pay grade, and I'm nowhere near a legal eagle on this. So I just want to make sure that we're not deceiving you and we're not deceiving ourselves, to make sure that we're getting the deal and what we're getting is what we should be getting. So I would ask our city manager and our city attorney to chime in at this time and give us their views.
So in regard to the actual JPA, we're still in the process of reviewing that. It's my understanding we received that Friday, which is why we're not suggesting and recommending to the council a go or no go at this point. Depending on how the process progresses, we'll be bringing back a go or no go to either, what was that, the 7th or the 21st, based on the city attorney's detailed review of that JPA, and then the staff review of the JPA. So at this point, we're looking for additional direction from the council, but not a go or no go at this point.
Additional direction in the form of whether we want you to continue?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Okay. I just want to be clear.
It's essentially preparing for that second meeting, setting it up, reviewing the JPA, discussing the JPA with Clean Energy's council if necessary. But going forward tonight doesn't, in my view, commit you to anything until we get to that next meeting.
Okay. You're just seeking direction from us to say, do we want to continue with this, have you do all the reviews, and then bring it back to us for a final vote?
Correct. Yes.
All right. Good.
And thank you for that clarification.
Well, never mind. We're good. All right.
Okay,
So who's next? Who's speaking next?
Mark Fulmer from MRW.
Go
And
ahead.
Mark has a different slide deck, so hopefully that's queued up and ready to go.
It looks like it's in process here.
Thank you. There you
All
go.
right, here we are. Good afternoon, all. I'm Mark Fulmer with MRW and Associates, one of the principals there. Next slide, please. We've been around for 35 years. I've been with the firm for over 20. We focus almost exclusively on California energy markets and policy and regulatory issues. I've been advising often communities as they're thinking about joining CCAs, going back to the county of Marin, as well as many of the cities and towns as Marin, as they were trying to get going. So I've seen quite a bit on this over the years. Next slide, please. What I was asked to do was the following. First of all, get the electrical load data for the city and analyze that, place it in the context of the load Peninsula Clean Energy is already serving. Number two, look at forecast PG&E's generation rates, which is something that my firm regularly does, and compare that to the costs and the rates that PCE could be offering over the next 10 years, just to verify that, in my opinion, that they'll be able to offer the rate savings that they have been advertising. Also look at it from PCE's point of view. Does this provide any significant burden to the remaining members of that JPA financially to add Los Banos to the organization? I was also asked to look at the risks to the city for joining the JPA, as well as highlight the pros and cons of the different options for CCA available to Los Banos. Next, please. So your load is summarized in these two figures. The one on the left is on a kilowatt hour basis. So if you just look at the total energy that all the residences and businesses in Los Banos use, that summarizes that. And you're about 2/3 residential with respect to load, and 95% if you go by the actual accounts. That's a heavier residential load than is in the state, than is in PG&E in general and statewide, where the rule of thumb is roughly 1/3 residential, 1/3 commercial, and 1/3 industrial and other. So your residential heavy, which is no problem, provides some benefits and other drawbacks, but it's an important thing to know moving forward. Next, please. Now, compared to the rest of PCE, you would be about both 5% of their total load. You'd add 5% on top of what their load already is, as well as adding about 5% more customers. Their mix is a little different, but still also residentially focused. Next, please. Looking at how you use your electricity during the year. And it should be no surprise to those of you who live there. I've got family in the Central Valley. I surely know that it's hot. And that means electricity use in the summer months is significantly higher than the other months. And you can see that with the most in August and the least in November by a fairly significant difference. Next, please. And this is actually fairly different than Peninsula Clean Energy. As Jan had mentioned, they experience their highest load during the winter. That's simply due to climatic reasons. They don't have the need for the air conditioning that you all have in the Central Valley. So you can see that even adding Los Banos, that basic winter peaking is still occurring, but they're filling in a little bit of that gap in the middle there by adding Los Banos. And when Jen was talking about having a complementary load, that's what she was talking about, is that filling in there and making it as flat as possible, which is economically the most efficient way to serve the load. Next, please. So getting down to the brass tacks financially, this is a rather complicated figure, but it shows a simple story. The black line at the top is my firm's projection of the PG&E generation rate. So that's the part that PCE would be displacing on the customer's bills. The columns are a build-up from the bottoms up of the different costs that PCE has to incur in order to provide service. When the columns are below the line, that means that there is a margin available for PCE to use to offer rate savings, to offer additional programs, to build up financial reserves. So what this shows is that 2022 is going to be a tight year, but beyond that, the fundamentals of the energy market suggest that that margin will widen and have plenty of comfort to be able to continue to offer that 5% rate savings. The 2022 tightness is no surprise to PCE. I had a number of conversations with their chief financial officer about these forecasts. And so there's some consistency with my longer term forecasting with what they're saying in the short term. But bottom line is they should be able to continue to offer that 5% rate savings. Next, please. looking at it from PCE's point of view, this shows how their costs and revenues would be changing over the first 10 years or so. And two things to point out. First of all, in the first couple years, there's a net cost to PCE to be adding Los Banos' load. However, over time, from 3 years or so into it, it becomes a net benefit, and that benefit continues to grow. That's due to some costs from starting up, as well as that those tight margins in 2022. Second thing to notice is adding Los Banos doesn't change the finances much at all. Everything in that next to last column is all on the order of 1% or at most 2%, and often under 1%. So that's often within the margin of error of forecasting. What it's telling me is that you may have a little cost to PCE in the first few years. It should be overall positive, but it's not a huge amount given the overall revenues of PCE. Next, please. I'm going to just highlight quickly some of what Sean already talked about. We were asked to lay out the benefits of going with PCE versus doing it on your own as a city enterprise. We didn't do any quantitative analysis. I didn't put any numbers to it. But quantitatively, the main trade-off is reduced risk to the city by joining PCE versus going on their own, being able to do it more quickly, and doing it with a lot less effort and a lot less upfront cost. The trade-off is you'll be one vote on a rather large board, and you'll have a voice, obviously, but if the general policies of PCE don't align with your city's values or where you want to go with the program, then that would be a problem. I'm sure you've had conversations with Jan on aligning those values and those priorities. But again, doing on the city, you have the risks, but you also have the control. And you see some amount of control when you're joining a larger board. Next slide, please. We also quantified the risks of joining. Generally, it's
hey, Mark.
Other things. I'm going to pass it to you here in a moment, Sean.
Okay,
Okay. And Sean here is going to review those for you and talk about what they are and how big or important they are as you move forward. Thank you.
Mark, I invite you to jump in if I miss anything here. Okay. We wanted to make sure to highlight this section because this is always the place in a technical study where the board rightly focuses and wants to understand how we deal with the risks. I will just point out that the risks are included in the executive summary of the study and also within the body. So it's on pages 8 and 9 if you want to follow along. So the first risk that MRW points out is financial risk to the city. There were a couple of things embedded in there. One is the risks associated with the legal structure, whether to be with the JPA or to embed the CCA within the city. The second one mentions rates and concern about that. And the biggest one I would say that you highlight is the potential withdrawal from PCE if you chose to leave after a period of time. So I'm going to, on the right-hand side, we've just got some mitigations here for you. I don't want to read them, but I'll just highlight briefly. We've already talked about the fact that the JPA structure, and this is true for PCE, Los Banos, any other community that's considering how to move forward with CCA. The JPA structure offers the greatest risk mitigation in terms of a legal and financial firewall. What that means is that the assets and liabilities of the JPA cannot pierce the veil, and your general fund is protected within the JPA structure. If you choose to bring it in-house and do it as an enterprise fund, you do not have that same level of protection. The city takes on the risk and the activities the liabilities and assets of that CCA. With respect to a withdrawal from the JPA, it is not anything we've ever seen with other CCAs that have expanded. So it is in the unlikely event. The mitigations there would be that you could work it out over time to withdraw customers on a phased basis over time. CCAs and other load-serving entities are able to resell contracts on the open market to recoup some of those losses. And there are other, administrative mitigations that could be worked out if necessary. This is a part of the JPA agreement that your city attorney will read when he reviews all of it. The next risk that was identified is called rate and PCIA uncertainty. So before I go on, PCIA is the fancy acronym, Power Charge Indifference Adjustment, which really essentially means an exit fee. And that exit fee is paid by the CCA customers. In this case, it's absorbed by PCE through rate making, important point. But that is a fee that is paid to essentially keep the utility, Pacific Gas and Electric, whole, so that there are no stranded costs that remain with the bundled service customer. So we've given this a low risk, and that's because you saw a chart a couple of slides ago that showed the forecast of PG&E rates based on historical patterns that go up, as they always have. And PCE remains committed to that 5% discount and has, if not the best, at least one of the top two best financial standings among all of the CCAs. They now have an investment grade credit rating. You have two of them, I believe, Jan, and significant reserve capacity to deal with any of the dark clouds that might come with a rate impact. So when you look around and you look at all the CCAs, these guys are in good shape to handle it. Next slide, please. Now, the next is called Direct Access Competitive Retail Risk. So for purposes of a description, direct access is a model whereby large commercial companies on a capped basis, so it's not open to everybody, they are able to access the wholesale market and contract for power directly through third-party suppliers. Direct access is only for large commercial customers. So the risk there is that the legislature decides to lift that cap or expand that cap, which could then result in commercial customers leaving a CCA's service. What's true about PCE and Los Banos is that neither of your loads have a high degree of commercial customers. It's predominantly residential for both entities. And so at the end of the day, we feel that the risk is low in terms of an economic impact to PCE on this one. The next is energy risk management. Again, I will just tip my hat to PCE. I've worked with many CCAs, as I mentioned to you the last time. And you guys have the best in class energy risk management policies. They have very robust reserve policies because in order to get that credit rating, you've got to have 120 days, I believe, cash on hand, which is significant. They have lower overhead. There is no profit margin. The credit rating that they have, and there are only 3 CCAs in the state that have a credit rating, does yield better terms and contract pricing. This is something that is unique in this situation that Los Banos may not have unless the city has its own credit rating. PCE has high levels of credibility also. Oh, excuse me, I jumped ahead. The last thing to mention is their professional in-house staff and capabilities. The last two, I'll be quick. Legislative and regulatory risk. This is something that all CCAs deal with. Municipalities deal with it. I noticed you mentioned the League of California Cities earlier. We we work with them. We're very familiar with the great job that they do, but CCA has its own trade association. It's called CalCCA. There's a lot of joint action among the various operating programs, both at the state legislature and before the California Public Utility Commission. And PCE enjoys a high level of credibility and strong reputation with both of those bodies. So they have a footprint, they have a presence at the state legislature. And the last is political risk. And those of us who've been elected officials, myself included, Jan Pepper included, we understand that this risk exists when you are an elected official on any policy direction that you may take. But we think what's important here, and I think what Stacy pointed out, is to make sure that by proceeding with CCE, with Community Choice Energy, that it directly aligns, it has a nexus to your city's goals in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, in terms of accessing right solar, in terms of reducing customer costs. So all of these things have a direct relationship to what you want to do, which lowers your political risk because you've established that. And what we've seen is that most elected officials who are on boards of CCAs actually have had the opposite. They've had really high praise, and it's been one of their legacy actions and assignments. And I can say that from personal experience. So with that, this now wraps up our presentation, and we will open it up for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending this evening and giving us a rundown. And like I said, my concerns are mostly the ones that our legal team needs to review along with the city manager to make sure that this is right for us. And this board that you're talking about, one thing I would want to make sure, and the only question I have is that the board couldn't vote to reduce the reimbursement to any one entity. Is that correct? Everyone is treated fairly the same?
Yes.
Okay. That would be important, that I didn't have to go there and whoever's the representative, it has to beg to get their money back by joining a larger board.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to look at specifics of the JPA agreement about getting your money back, but that's something that you should be looking at with your city attorney, and we can have our PCE attorney walk through the JPA agreement with your city attorney so that it's crystal clear exactly what the agreement says. But basically, every city in San Mateo County has agreed to it as well. So it's just, if you decide you want to leave, then any costs power procurement costs that have been made on your behalf would just need to be paid off. But as Sean said, that power can be sold into the open market. It can be phased. Something can be worked out. But, we can't really, unless we do something really bad and our rates are way higher than PG&E's, which we certainly have no intention of ever doing. The idea is to be better than PG&E, which we are, to keep the rates 5% below, and see what else we can do to bring savings and value to your residents and businesses.
But by bringing on Las Banos, you're not adding to your grid in order to keep the rest of Peninsula Clean Energy solvent with power. You're not having to go out and buy anything by taking us on. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, we already have a lot of long-term contracts. So as Mark noted, the addition of the Los Banos load would be about a 5% addition to our current load. So it's not a significant addition. Okay. And, we would start procuring for that next year for any additional amount, but it's not a significant amount.
And each citizen has the chance whether to opt in or to opt out. Is that correct?
The way it works is that everyone is automatically enrolled, and then people have the opportunity to opt out. So during the enrollment time, which would happen, assuming, we would have to figure out what the best time is for it. But say everyone was enrolled in January of 22, there would be 4 notices sent to every customer. So there'd be one sent in November, one sent in December, another sent in January, another sent in February, informing them of what has happened and giving them the option to opt out. So in our case, when we enrolled our customers in San Mateo County, we had about 2% of our customers opt out. It was a very small amount, and that's generally what most CCAs have experienced. Because if it's the option of paying more to PG&E or paying less as a CCA customer, most people are interested in paying less. But yeah, and that's the option. Anytime, anyone can opt out and go back to PG&E. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, Deborah, Tom, and Brett, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have some questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. Just piggybacking on the opting in and opting out when a city joins. Exactly where are most of your customers located? Because things are a bit different here in the Valley than they are in San Mateo or the East Bay, things like that. The way people think and how they look at climate change and things surrounding around climate. And I see that more people in the Valley, I don't know about in San Mateo or the East Bay, are purchasing solar systems. So therefore, they're going to have a significant amount of savings already through their solar systems. And is your program going to benefit someone like that? And if we have more people with solar here in the Valley, and I believe the state has already mandated that new homes that are being built in 2020 must have solar systems on the rooftops. So, I guess I have some concern, and if you can enlighten me a little bit as to how that's going to affect a customer who's using less PG&E energy, producing their own, how your company's still going to benefit them.
Right. So someone who has a solar system on their roof would still be enrolled. And what we offer solar customers is that each month we kind of true up the amount of power that they've used versus the amount they've bought from the grid. And for any month in which they've used or they've generated more power than they needed, we will buy that power essentially from them at 1 cent per kilowatt hour more than what they're paying us for the power. So we have 2 products. We have our main product, which is the 5% below PG&E, and then we also have a 100% renewable product, which is priced 1 cent per kilowatt hour more if someone wants to do that. So anyone who sells excess solar production from their solar system is paid the higher rate for that 100% renewable energy. So it actually benefits them. As a PG&E customer, they are not compensated at that amount, but we're compensating them more. So our overall goal is to be more renewable, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions overall. And so if someone's putting a solar system on their home and therefore we provide them with less electricity, that's totally fine because they're contributing to the overall goal of having more renewable power on the grid and producing less GHGs.
And if I may add just to that, Deborah, Ms. Lewis, that in addition to what Jan said, the other thing to know is that the customers who have solar on their rooftops, when they enroll with CCA, with PCE, it does not interrupt any of the existing contracts that they have with the solar providers. So nothing happens there. They just are enrolled in what we call the net metering program, and it has better incentives, frankly, for overproduction than PG&E, as Jan mentioned. So that's worth noting.
Whatever they overproduce, if you purchase it from them, that's considered income to them, and that would be a taxable income. Okay.
I mean, it kind of depends. I'm not sure that is the case. It's just paid up on their electricity bill.
Yeah.
So
it's not taxable.
I don't think it's taxable.
Okay. So you have San Mateo. What other counties do you have up in the? Is it mostly up in the Bay or East Bay that you have customers right now?
We are only in San Mateo County.
Only in San Mateo County. Okay. Because I heard the statement by Mr. Fulmer that you would be one vote on a large board. So that just kind of raised a red flag for me as to what that large board would be. And I guess it's the San Mateo County board that he was referring to. And would that be correct, or are there some other boards?
Oh, it's the Peninsula Clean Energy Board, which consists of a council member from each of the 20 cities in San Mateo County, plus 2 county supervisors. So it's a 22-member board right now. And if you joined, then you would be the 23rd member. And Alex was there at our board meeting last month. And actually, we're having a board retreat on September 26th. And I will make sure that you all get invitations to that. So you can just pop in and kind of see what the board, how they operate. They're a very, very congenial group, and everyone is working towards the same goal. Everyone's aligned in what they want to see happen, which is to see lower rates, cleaner electricity, and moving towards a cleaner future. So that's really their emphasis, and you would just be a part of that. But I invite you to observe one of these board meetings so that you can feel comfortable that it would be a fit for you. And I don't know if Alex wants to comment on what he observed when he attended the meeting last month.
Okay, well, I guess that's something you can have Alex send each council member a link so that if we choose to look at that board meeting, we have that option.
Okay.
Just a couple more questions. When you talked about if you join opting out, if there's no one in our county area that wants to join a JPA, but if at some later date there's a mind change between the counties, cities, and what have you, and want to form their own JPA down here, if let's just say, for instance, if we join another one, the San Mateo one, and we want to opt out and be a part of what's in the Central Valley, is there a cost to do that, or is it like just changing from one JPA to another, or one? I don't know if it's the right terminology or not, but
you are. Okay. I'm going to take this one. We're going to tag team. So that very scenario that you're pointing out is included in the JPA agreement as part of the withdrawal provisions. That's the section of the JPA agreement. And essentially, it's part of what we talked about earlier in the risk discussion, that if a community decides to depart service from the CCE for whatever reason, they would be obligated to essentially pay for the stranded costs of their departure, right? And that's primarily because you have power contracts that have been entered into on your behalf. Now, you guys only represent 5% of the load, which actually is helpful in this case, because your overall financial hit on that would be substantially low. There are also other mitigating factors around phasing customers out over time and all of those other things. But yes, that is in the JPA agreement. No matter where you go, that's a requirement for so that you don't impact customers that remain with the CCE.
Even if it's with your company?
Well, no. So, and I should be clear, we're a nonprofit public agency. Okay. And so if Los Banos joins, as per the conditions of the JPA agreement, there's a withdrawal provision. It's not super long, but essentially it says, and this would be the case with any CCE whether it was Silicon Valley or if you formed your own in Merced, it's likely that you would have the same provision, right? Because you don't want a situation where a community can just decide it wants to leave and park itself somewhere else and leave that existing CCE and all of those customers holding the bag, essentially. So that's
Sean,
why that provision is included. Yes.
Sean, I think what Mrs. Lewis is asking is that if we stay with you under another name that's not Los Banos, but a JPA in the county, but we still stay with Peninsula Clean Energy, and we just join a body with other cities.
Well, I think the way that would work, Mr. Mayor, the way that would work is, and Jan, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way that would work is that the other cities would choose to join the existing JPA as well.
Yes.
And it could end up being like Monterey Bay that, now is serving most of the Central Coast, and they just rebranded. So those are all things to consider later on.
Okay. All right. The only downside to that is that then we become a vote of a smaller board to get our money back. Right now, the way this is being set up, if I understand it correctly, we're going to have a separate account for any incentives that come back to Los Banos, and we don't have to vote to get our money back. That's why when we set this up, we wanted to be a separate entity from everybody else and not join a JPA. Although we are joining a JPA, there's a separate bank account for us. Am I correct, Sean and Jen?
Jan, do you want to take that, or shall I?
Go ahead.
Okay. So that was part of the discussion that we discussed earlier on in the presentation, that full membership versus partial membership. And what happened in that, and we're happy to, show you all the matrices and all the research we did. The bottom line is it was going to be tremendously burdensome to have a fully separate chart of accounts, to have a separate entity, to have this partial membership is essentially what it was. It would change the voting structures. The attorneys opined that it just was going to not be worth it for you or for us, because it transfers some of the financial obligation to Los Banos in a way that we think you guys didn't want. And you also don't have access to the credit rating. So that's not what's being offered. It's fully integrated membership.
Yes,
Okay.
but as far as the incentives that we get back, those are going to be our incentives.
So I think we should be clear that the incentives, so there's no return of capital to the city, right? That's a JPA, that's the law of a JPA. So what you would get is you would be part of discussions around program development. There would certainly be programs that are tailored to Los Banos that are offered in your city. You would have a staff member, but there's no sort of return of revenue back.
Right. But we would have an equal partnership, so something couldn't be reduced for our city and an enhancement for another city. Everything would be equal to the JPA.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Yes. All right. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Okay, so let me finish my questions and then I'll turn it over and let other people ask theirs. You said that each CCA has a credit rating, but you didn't mention what yours was. What is your credit rating?
Okay, we have a credit rating from Moody's, which is Baa2, and we have a credit rating from Fitch, which is BBB+. So both of those are investment grade credit ratings.
And I should be clear that PCE is one of only 3 CCAs in the state that have a credit rating. So not all CCAs have credit ratings. This one does.
Okay.
Yeah, there are 21 CCAs in the state. We were the second one to get a credit rating, and actually our Fitch rating of BBB+, when we got it, was the highest rating of any CCA.
In the state of California or in this area?
In the state of California. It's higher than PG&E's credit rating. Of course, that doesn't say much right now, but
that doesn't.
It's a good job.
Okay. And then my last question is, with the fires and all that are going on, because I remember when you came to speak to us before that you kind of indicated that if there's a fog overcast, that your solar panels can't pick up the energy and generate what it would be on a sunny day, which we have a lot of down here in the valley. But what has your generation been like, during this time? Have you been able to produce the same level of energy that you did before the fires, or has it reduced?
That's a good question. And, I didn't have a chance to look at what the production was from the Wright Solar Project when there was so much ash and stuff in the air. What I think I heard is that overall, in the state, just because of all the smoke, that the production from the solar had gone down a little bit, but that's just overall. Now that at least here, today was the first day we had blue skies again. And when I look at the air quality index, it looks like maybe tomorrow is going to be the day when your air clears up, hopefully. So yeah, it did affect it a little bit, but it's just for a few days.
Are you up in the San Mateo area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, when I got up this morning, the ground was wet. It was like, wow. It was so, it was such a welcome surprise.
I think it's also worth noting that PCE and every load serving entity, every utility has baseload power. There's the California Independent System Operator, which is like the traffic cop for all the electrons running through the state's grid. So they are the balancing authority that balances out those dips in solar production and is able to sort of turn up the dial on on baseload power. So it's a really interesting question. The good news is that there's a larger state entity that serves all of us that balances that out.
Yeah, and the production from the Wright Solar Project is provides about 14% of the power that we need on an annual basis for PCE. So we get solar, we get wind, we have some hydroelectric power. We have a mix of a lot of different energy resources to provide all of the energy that's needed.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Bliss.
Good questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Jones or Mr. Faria, do you have any questions?
None at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Faria?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, what's your customer load right now? How many customers do you have total?
We have about 295,000 accounts.
Wow.
And I think there was let's see, one of the slides that Mark showed had that. Let me see. Yeah, we have 295,000 accounts. You have about 15,000 accounts. So looking at our 20 cities, you kind of fit right in the middle. There would probably be about 20 communities that are smaller than you, and 10 communities that are smaller than you and 10 that are larger than you.
All right. Okay, so council members.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Alex.
A little unusual, but if I might ask one question. So Jan, you mentioned that the overall goal is to keep the rates lower than PG&E, unless, I don't want to misquote you, but unless PCE would do some bad things, I think you said. What sort of things could I guess set that askew where PCE's rates would be higher than PG&E?
The main risk is this PCIA, the power charge indifference adjustment that we talked about in the risks section. And that's an ongoing discussion at the Public Utilities Commission. However, we have, right now, I think our goal is to have 180 days cash on hand for our reserves. We exceed that right now. I think we're at 240 days cash on hand. So having these large reserves allows us to weather any kind of fluctuation in that PCIA so that we can continue to maintain that discount, because that's very important to us that we continue to do that. Other CCAs have had their rates be lower or higher than PG&E, but for us, it's important to be consistently lower and to consistently have the 5% discount. So that's really what those reserves are for, to handle any kind of volatility or changes in the energy markets.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Mayor.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Okay, council member, are we in agreement or not to proceed to the next level of analyzation by the city management and the city attorney? Is there anyone who is against that? Okay, I guess it's unanimous. Alex, your direction is to proceed with the analyzation and then bring it back to us for approval if that's the next step.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jan, Sean, and Mark.
Thanks, everybody.
Before we move forward, Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Do we have any kind of date certain as to when we're going to hear back in regards to, what they've come up with?
Good question. Alex and Bill? What do you think?
That timeline that we showed during the presentation, maybe Sean, I think we're expecting to be back either one of the two meetings in October.
Correct. So we were hoping for October 7th, but that will be contingent upon your city attorney's review of the JPA agreement. We can set up a call with the attorney for PCE and work those things out. And then just so you know, what will come back to you will be the JPA agreement as amended, and your city attorney will opine on that, and a resolution if you choose to adopt the JPA agreement that would confer membership. And then the second document that will be brought back to you is a statutory requirement, which is the CCE ordinance, which would essentially be Los Banos passing an ordinance that they want to participate in community choice aggregation. So those are the two kind of decision points that will come back to you in October.
And will your board in San Mateo have a meeting before this comes back to us?
No, they've already met, I believe. But Jan, it's coming up at the retreat, right?
No, they've already met, and they've what we've done is part of amending the JPA agreement, and what we had to do to amend it was to allow for additional cities to be part of the JPA. So we have to send that out to all of the existing members of the JPA and give them at least 30 days notice that this proposed change to the JPA agreement is happening. And the plan is that the Peninsula Clean Energy Board at their October 22nd meeting would adopt the new JPA agreement and would also pass a resolution approving Los Banos as a new member. So, your council making the decision October 7th, preferably to move forward, would then the next thing for our board would be, or the existing board, is to make those decisions on October 22nd.
Well, the only reason I ask is because you had invited us to see a board meeting. So it doesn't sound like that's going to happen before, if this council makes a decision to join. So that was why I asked the question.
We're having our board retreat on Saturday, September 26th. Every September we have a board retreat, and this one will actually be a pretty interesting one to attend. We're going to be focusing on the strategic plan that the board adopted earlier this year and how we will measure progress against that. There's also going to be a presentation on some market research that's been done about people's preferences. There will be a section on finances, which I think you'll find very interesting, kind of what different scenarios could play out and what that means for the finances of the organization, and then an overview of all of the programs that we're doing in electric transportation and building electrification. So in particular, those two would be interesting, I think, to all of you, those last two items. The retreat is from 8:30 till noon on Saturday, September 26th. Normally, our board meetings are on Thursdays, the fourth Thursday of the month at 6:30. But in September, we do this retreat where in the past, when we all got together, we'd have food.
So is that something that we would be able to view online?
Yes.
So we'll just wait to see what we're able to get from you. Okay.
Yeah, we'll send you the link. It'll be a virtual meeting.
All right, thank you.
The only thing that's missing is the food.
And you'll have to provide your own food this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm all sad about that.
Okay. All right. I guess we're done. You have direction. The city has direction, and let's see where it goes from here.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor and council members, for your time and interest and attention on this. We're excited that you're continuing to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Let's go on to item 11, COVID-19 status update. Alex, do you have anything?
Just a couple things, Mayor. In support of the Mask Up Merced County effort, we have been doing distribution events of free masks and other informational material regarding COVID. We have an event tomorrow at Save Mart from 8 to 10 a.m. Would encourage folks, members of the community, stop by. I believe representatives from the police department and the fire department will be distributing free masks. So stop by Save Mart tomorrow morning to get your free face covering and other information regarding COVID. We continue to have and are doing testing here in Los Banos. First site is operated by Golden Valley Health Centers. That's at the Los Banos Community Center. That is open Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. There's more information on the city's website, phone number to make appointments. There's also a second testing site provided by Merced County at the Los Banos Fairgrounds. Appointments are available on Mondays and Tuesdays from 8 to noon. And again, that information regarding testing is available on the city's website. I would like to stress that what we are hearing regarding the importance of testing, what we are hearing from public health staff with Merced County is that if the community does not take advantage of these testing sites, we could see those testing sites go away. So we would encourage folks to get tested, use those sites. Otherwise, the state of California could eliminate that state-provided testing site at the fairgrounds. There will also be a mobile testing site set up on Friday, September 18th at the Los Banos Migrant Center, 18926 West Henry Miller Boulevard. Again, Friday, September 18th from 12 to 7 p.m. In regard to our numbers, I'm looking at the county website. What everyone I think had thought might occur is a spike after the Labor Day holiday. And we're hoping that does not materialize. But again, we're hoping that doesn't materialize. Merced's at about 3,100 cases. Los Banos, a little over 1,000. And something's going on with the dashboard operated by the county. And I'm not able to bring up Atwater's numbers. Unfortunately, we have had 131 deaths in Merced County at this point. We are working with the county to try and obtain information on those unfortunate deaths by cities. So we're hoping to have the breakdown of that data by city at some point from the county. When we do receive that, I will pass that on to the council. So I think in regard to COVID, that's all I have at this point, Mayor. I don't know if you or the council have any questions at this point.
Well, the mayors meet every Friday along with the city managers in a conference meeting by phone, and we discuss the issues. And I'm happy to report that the mayors are joining forces to want the COVID cases reported by city limits. Because right now, the over 1,000 cases that we have are reported by 93635 zip code. And there are 4,000 people outside of Los Banos. And so we don't know the true numbers of how many are by city limits and how many are in the county. Right now, they're not reporting basically county cases, they're reporting zip codes. And that's the Los Banos zip code. So I'm pushing along with the rest of the mayors, majority of the mayors that want to see it by zip or city limits and see what kind of job we're doing within our city limits. And then also the people who have perished, 131, that is countywide. And the last report that we have, there are 93635. There are 9 people that perished in that zip code. Now, I don't know if all of those were in the city limits or somewhere in the county. So we're getting that breakdown, as Alex mentioned. So these are priorities by the mayors, the majority of the mayors that want to see the actual counts to see what kind of job we're doing, either with the spread or not the spread of COVID-19. So I want to reach out to all the mayors and thank them for the support, because it's making a difference on what we'd like to see reported within our community in reference to COVID-19. So as Alex said, are there any questions by the council members at this time?
None from me.
Okay, Mrs. Lewis?
No questions.
Mr. Jones?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Alex. So let's move on to item 12, advisement of public notices, 2 reports, and we'll go to Director Elms.
Okay. The first item is an infill project. It's a site plan review for 1202 G Street. This is across the street from the Dairyman, the San Joaquin Valley Dairyman shop, and across the street from the courthouse. The applicant is Sunset Hills Development, which this has already gone to design review, and it will be a public hearing. The next item is a site plan review, and this is for site optimization at the existing 7-Eleven on the corner of 6th Street and Pacheco Boulevard. The address is 611 Pacheco Boulevard, so this is the existing Circle K. This particular item is it came to fruition from a conversation that we were able to have face-to-face with 7-Eleven at the International Council of Shopping Centers, ICSC, retail convention in Las Vegas back in 2019. We were able to meet with their real estate developer director, and we were able to explain the site and the unutilization of the site because Papa Murphy's had left. So they, after that conversation, had said they would look into optimization, and this is going to be a demolition of the existing building and a rebuild. So a pretty exciting project. Both of these items are going to be heard on Wednesday, September 23rd at 5:30 on the GoToMeeting virtual platform. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. let's go on to item 13, City Manager's Report. Alex?
Mr. Mayor, before we move forward, for Stacy,
Yes,
on that
go ahead.
7-Eleven project, is that whole entire building going to be demolition or and rebuilt, or just the 7-Eleven?
No, the entire building will be
Okay,
gone.
great. Thank you.
Okay, Alex, item 13.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. So just to follow up on Stacy's comment on that 7-Eleven project, that's a direct result of the city's retail recruitment effort and our economic development effort. Those trips that we have been making to recruit retailers, recruit restaurants. So that, again, just a direct result of that effort. Otherwise tonight, just one other topic to cover. Unfortunately, as the council's aware, we're seeing an increase of crimes of violence in town. In 2020, we've seen, unfortunately, very unfortunately, 7 homicides in town, 53 shootings. And as we compare that to previous years, we'll again, very unfortunately, have 1 to 3 homicides and anywhere between 35 to 40 shootings a year. So an unfortunate, really tragic increase in homicides this year. So internally, the police department is continuing to direct their efforts in areas of the community where we're seeing, increases in crime activity, where we're seeing those highest increases. We've made some adjustments to staffing in an attempt to address those increasing numbers. And the police department is focused on reducing those numbers and containing that activity. We are working with our allied agencies to address those issues and dedicating those resources from those allied agencies to address that increase. We've seen assistance from Merced Police Department, Merced County Sheriff's Office, Merced County Probation, State Parole, and State Department of Justice. Really working with them in an attempt to reduce, again, that crime and that activity. We're being open and transparent with the community regarding those increasing numbers. As those events and activities occur, we will post that information onto the police department Facebook page. So we will continue to post that information on there, and we want to remind residents in the power that they have as individual residents in assisting us and assisting the police department to help battle that crime and battle those events. And I would encourage the folks to report suspicious activity if they're seeing it in their community. I just wanted to give a brief update on that increase in crime and activity. We are planning on, with the police chief, presenting a more detailed update at a council meeting in October, but did again want to reiterate to the council what we're seeing in the community and let the community know that in October we will be providing a detailed update to the council and the community regarding this increased activity and what the police department is doing in response to that activity. So with that, that's all I really have tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, Alex, for providing that information. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
And please, Chief Breezy, if you're still on, thank you for what you do. And I know you're not missing, a trick on this. And I that's all I'm going to say at this time. All right, let's go on to item 14, reportable report update on the Merced County Association of Governments, MCAG, and Measure V committee. Just one thing that I can talk about tonight and tomorrow, MCAG is going to be voting on the tipping fee. And as I outlined before, we discovered that Los Banos and Merced are paying the highest amount for the tipping of garbage. And then there are adjusted rates for other cities. And so MCAG has an agenda item, and that will be to hire a consultant to talk about the equalization of the tipping fees throughout Merced County. So Los Banos is not paying more than its fair share. And after careful investigation with all the minutes from MCAG, they really couldn't come up with a reason as to why Los Banos and Merced are paying the highest tipping fees. And I just want to thank the council for supporting me in these actions and letting them know that we are a unified body when it comes to being frugal with our money, and we are going to pay our fair share, but that's what we're going to pay is our fair share. And so other things to report, the recyclable contract, which was going to cost Los Banos $400,000 or more for the next 2 years if we had to divert our recyclables to the hauler. It was that is now at the discretion of the city of Los Banos to find the best place that we can for our recyclables and save the money that we can save, and that applies now to all the other cities. And pretty soon, all the cities in Merced County will be having to do recycling, and it won't depend upon Los Banos, Merced, and parts of the county to make up the diversion rate, so other cities don't have to recycle. And Los Banos has been doing the right thing, but it costs us money, and we need to get the best bang for our buck. And we want to pay our fair share, but that's all we want to pay. We're not paying to subsidize anyone else. So the recyclables contract was passed last week, and now the tipping fee study is on the agenda for tomorrow. And we'll give you an update soon to let you know. But I just want to tell you thank you for the support, because I'm your representative, but I need your backing. So thank you again. Okay, let's go on to item 15. Or any questions or anyone want to comment? I'm sorry. Mr. Jones?
No, I was just getting ready for 15.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 15, City Council member reports. All right, we start with you. Go ahead, Mr. Jones.
Yes, I'd like to make a council member request to have our design standards updated. I'd like to get that on the council to get that voted on. I know we're going to need a consultant. I see more developments coming forward in the years to come, and I just want to make sure our standards are up to par with neighboring communities. A lot of our current communities, they look kind of blah, and I think we can do a lot better. So now's the time to do it.
Okay, is that the end of your report?
And that'll be it for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mrs. Lewis? Mrs. Lewis?
I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I didn't turn it on. What I said is I wanted to tack on to Councilmember Jones' request, and that is, I know the state has an outline of what they require as far as landscaping in general is concerned, but we really need to look at beefing up our landscaping, especially in regards to our public right-of-ways, whether or not we want to continue to have the green space between the sidewalk and the street, or whether or not we want to go back to what we were doing, which was having sidewalks to street and sidewalk to private property. What I see when I travel in my district is that curb space where the trees are planted and the greenery that's in there is not being maintained for the most part by some residents, and other residents have taken it out and they've landscaped other products in there. And in regards to businesses, I could point out some where they will enhance their landscape, and others they will minimally put just barely anything in there, and nothing has grown in over the years that the landscape has been put in. So I want to see something, even though we are required to do more drought-tolerant landscaping, that the landscaping is suitable and lush enough so that it lends to the desirability of our community. So, you know, I just kind of wanted to tack that on there. And I think what I was talking about was the Mow Strip. The Mow Strip is, you know, with this new kind of succulent that's being planted. I see it's growing down into the streets and the gutters, and I think most people feel like that's the city's property and city should be maintaining it, so they don't. And lastly, I want to send my condolences to the Goodyear family in the passing of Larry Goodyear and his wife Doralee. I met Larry when I first started serving on the Planning Commission back in 1998, and he was a planning commissioner at that time. And just in the years of knowing him and his wife, and him being the president of the Golden Agers, and he's just been a good force in our community. He was a volunteer firefighter, so it's a loss that a lot of us will feel, and my heart does go out to his wife Doralee. So for those who know her, just keep her in your prayers, and we wish her the best. I don't know what's happening in regards to any service, and you know, I don't know what the state is going to be allowing anywhere here in the near future in regards to funeral services, but Larry's going to be well missed. And that's my conclusion this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Freya?
I just want to echo the condolences to the Goodyear family. Losing Larry is a great loss to our community. He was an outstanding citizen who did an awful lot for a lot of us. We're going to miss him a great deal. Thank you.
Does that conclude your report, Mr. Freya?
Yes, that's all I had to say tonight.
Thank you. Well, let me add one other person to the list of people who have passed on, and that's Joe Bondi. Joe Bondi was a teacher at Los Banos High School for many, many years. Joe came here in 1964. I know that because I was a freshman in high school. And what a super individual. He was just the nicest man you could possibly want to know. Great community supporter, raised his family here. Head football coach of the Los Banos Tigers for many, many years. Crowning glory was when we beat Dos Palos at a Thanksgiving Day game, and I'll never forget that. I believe it was, oh God, I don't want to say the year, but it was in the late 60s. It had to be, I think, maybe 66, and it was just a day that it was so memorable for the city of Los Banos because of that friendly rivalry with Dos Palos and Los Banos. But it was down to the second game, and we happened to be lucky to win that day. And Joe Bondi was the head coach, and he remained friends with that football team for forever. To this day, they were just his guys, and I can just tell you, and then having come back as a teacher and working with Mr. Bondi, it was a true honor. So along with the Goodyear family and Doralee Goodyear, Doralee was my school nurse when I was principal of the junior high school, and Larry's just a super guy that again I've known for just many, many decades, along with Joe. So those two are going to be sadly missed for what they did for this community, and don't know what else to say. They were just two wonderful individuals. So with that, I had one other thing, forgot. I would like to I also have a council member request, and that is to place the graffiti ordinance for consideration by the council for review, because the city basically gets stuck painting the graffiti, and we have some property owners who are just absolute princes when it comes to removing graffiti and keeping their property up, and we have others who are not, and they let the graffiti sit, and then we have to send them letter after letter. Maybe we can do something like we do with the abatement of the lots. We send them a letter. If they don't clear it up, we go in and we have a private contractor, and then we bill them and put it on the rolls if they don't pay, because they need to keep up their properties. The city does a wonderful job of removing the graffiti, but we can't be responsible for the whole town, and property owners need to keep up their properties. So I'd like to, that's my basis for placing the graffiti ordinance on for consideration and possible amendment at the next council meeting. So with that, I would like to now go to item 16, closed session, conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, agency designated representatives, City Manager Terraza, City Attorney Vaughn, City Clerk, Human Resources Director Maloney, Finance Director Williams, Legal Counsel Tufo, Employee Organizations, Los Banos Police Officers Association, LBPOA, Los Banos Police Sergeants Association, LBPSA, Los Banos Firefighters Association, LBFFA, Los Banos Police Dispatchers Community Service Officers Association, LBPD CSOA, and Los Banos Police Employees Union, Public Works, Local 1/AFS-CME, and unrepresented miscellaneous employees. If we have anything to report, we will do so at the end of closed session. If there are no other comments, I would like to tell the public good evening, and we'll talk to you at the next council meeting. Thank you. Director.